All right, welcome back to the 10 Tabs Open podcast. This is your host, Alex Howell, and today we had on Eric Yazell, who is a very good friend of mine, and I'm very lucky to be able to call him that, and he has also been a very, very important influence in my life. Eric is the director of the theater department at State Fair Community College in Sedalia, Missouri, which hosts an amazing, I believe it's right at 300 or just over 300 seat theater there. They have a great theater department. It's where I went for my first 2 years of college, and he to put it mildly, he kind of saved me from myself several times and was just an absolutely amazing influence in my life. And so I owe the man a lot. But he has directed more plays than you could count, been in more plays than you could count, and has influenced the lives of more students than even he probably knows. I had him on the podcast because we both have very similar views on a lot of things, and we both have very differing views on a lot of things. So I do want to say one thing before we start this, and that is I know that there are going, especially towards the end of the podcast is a little bit around 3 hours long, which is a long time to talk, but when he and I get together, we're both pretty talkative people. But towards the end of the podcast, probably the last third or so, we kind of get onto some subject matter that you might have the desire to just pause or stop the podcast. That is completely understandable. I try to have people on here, one, for the diversity of thought, but also because I want different opinions to be exchanged, and I want to be able to learn from people and, kind of hear that happen. So if you get to a point where you're like, I don't want to talk about, we get into some political subjects and things of that nature, but if you feel that way, obviously feel free. You don't have to listen to it. For the most part, it's a very lighthearted feeling up front. We talk about theater, our experiences, what it means to be in the theater department and have friends that are there for you, and then we kind of get into that subject matter later, and that's pretty much when we hit the point as friends. So again, I really hope you enjoy the podcast. This is Eric Yazell, the director of the theater department at State Fair Community College, a great friend, a great man, and I hope you have the opportunity to enjoy what he has to say, because if there's one person that you can trust in the world, it's obviously your self, your parents, your spouse, your children, and then just call Eric Yazell, because he'll tell you the truth, and he'll be as kind as he possibly can. Thanks.
You on it, and you have a pretty big laugh, kind of like I
Oh
do.
yeah.
So it wasn't totally obnoxious where it felt like you were peeking out. So
Yeah.
I figured you had a decent system. So.
Yeah, I picked it up. I actually just went to Guitar Center, and I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing, so sell me something, which is always like, oh, how much money do you have?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll work on that. But they actually, and the boxes are still over there because I haven't moved them since we moved, but they actually had like a podcasting setup, and then the guy just gave me that thing, which is kind of how I control everything. And for if you've got a band, that's the worst thing you can have, because it's like that's a microphone and a guitar, and good luck with everything else. But
Yeah.
for this purpose, it's like,
yeah.
And even if I have one more person or two more people on, I've got enough connections where I just pop in, and now it goes to 4, and it can still handle it. It's not a guitar and drums would know.
Yeah, I haven't had much of a chance to listen. I just kind of started listening to the one today from the Arts Asylum.
Yeah.
And but it sounds interesting. I mean, I was kind of looking at it, going, "Well, this is kind of cool."
Yeah. Well, it was one of those things. Like at the beginning of the year, I was really kind of having trouble because I try to like get in front of every YouTube video and every article I can read about either marketing, whether it's social media or just putting content out. And everything I was reading was, if you really want to have enough of it, you just have to either do one of two things. You have to pretty much force yourself to be on it all day long. And with me, it's like, again, my business model is a little different than some. I can be out at the open house on Sunday and take video or take pictures and do that kind of thing, because I know this will surprise you. Like, being in front of a camera doesn't really bother me.
Yeah,
that's
I know,
shocking.
Weird. Yeah, weird.
So it was like, okay, well, I can do some of that stuff, but at the same time, there's a lot of times where I'm in front of my computer just working on getting stuff out. And so it was kind of one of those, okay, well, how do I do this now? And the first thing, I listened to Gary Vaynerchuk.
Name sounds familiar.
Yeah.
But...
hated listening to him in the beginning because he's one of those, kind of East Coast sounding guys where it's like, you got to effing do this and you better do this. And if you don't, you suck. And if you can't do this, then that.
Yeah, yeah.
And I realized that I just am such a pansy that I hate listening to people like that. Like, I'm not a piece of shit. So once I actually just kind of forced myself to listen to him, because I saw a lot of people that I followed him. I was like, well, okay, I should listen to this guy. And that was pretty much what he said. He's like, if you can create content in any way, and like he has a podcast where eventually like I'd like to get this on like video recording too. But he does that, and a few others that I follow do that. It's like, and the best thing about it is now you have a 3-hour conversation that you can clip.
Yeah.
So now you've created content within that content. So it's like, okay, well, I'll start this. And the best part about it was I was trying to figure out a name, and the whole 10 tabs open thing came because I was like, that's how my computer looks all the time. Because,
I thought it was perfect.
Yeah,
I was like, oh, okay, that's cool.
Yeah, I have no brain. I can't stick to anything. Like you were talking about earlier where it's like a push notification comes up and you're immediately on that.
Oh, yeah.
Same way. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm glad you're not doing video yet because I have a face for audio podcast.
There was a guy at I went to Boys State in high school, and there was a guy who apparently none of us, we were young enough where none of us had ever heard that phrase. And it wasn't like he was a bad looking kid, but somebody told this high schooler, like an adult in their radio department, because he did like the Boys State radio.
Yeah.
And they told him, it's like, well, the good thing about this is you've got a really good voice, but you have a face for radio, so I think you can do this. And he was like, it was the most insulting thing I'd ever heard.
Damn.
Jesus Christ, man. Just ruined the kid's dreams right there.
Yeah. He's probably scarred for life now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's like in theater, you call them character actors.
Absolutely. Yeah. They're wounded. That's why I've been a great character actor all my life. I'm screwed up.
Yeah, I can't remember who it was. It was one of the larger actors in Hollywood, and he said that he went to like and I'm trying to think of who it was because it would have been like a Seth Rogen or a Chris Farley, but I don't think either of them would have cared. So somebody who would, but he said he's like, I got invited to the Academy Awards, so I'm going out and I go to the after party and I just see this display of food and it's beautiful and it's everything you can imagine. It's everything from steak and caviar to just name the dessert. It is on this spread. He's like, so I grab my 4 plates and just load it up. He's like, and I sit down and I'm the only person sitting down and I start looking around and realizing how fat I am because I'm looking at like Christian Bale who will not touch this like food.
Yeah.
And Sandra Bullock who will not touch this food. And he's like, and so I just started eating out of shame. And one of the older big guys in Hollywood came up and sat right next to him. He had his 3 or 4 plates too and was like, character actors. And they just
Well, that's cool. Not to mention you can't be an ingenue your whole life, although some people have tried to go against that theory.
Yep.
But so you got to be a character at some time or another.
Well, like look at the transition like Chris Pratt right now. It's like he played the fat guy in Parks and Rec, and then now he's a superhero.
Yeah, that's kind of wild. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Go figure.
Yeah. So what's the upcoming year look like?
We are doing, actually, we're starting off with Kristen Henning, who you know. I mean, you were a student.
Kristen Janke.
Yeah. Janke, yeah. I still call her Janky.
Nice.
All the time. I don't know if it irritates her or not, but she smiles and goes with it. But she is directing Mr. Burns, a post-electric play, which is kind of it's in the future after electricity. So it's kind of a post-apocalyptic show. But it starts with these guys, these people at a campfire trying to retell a Simpsons episode after the end of television and electricity. And so it goes from the first act where they're around a campfire telling the story and they're getting facts wrong about it and stuff like that, to the second act, which is 7 years later, which is the same group now have formed a theater troupe, and now they perform the Simpsons episode, to the third act that is 75 years later, to where now it's become this stylized musical that was a Simpsons episode. So it's a lot about the kind of the storytelling and how things change and how we interpret things. So it's really it's a pretty cool play. I like it.
Nice.
But then I'm directing a children's musical, which I think we're going to take on the road this year. We're talking about taking it to Lake of the Ozarks and to Boonville, but those things are still in the works.
Yep.
And you were involved in a
Oh yeah, a couple of them.
One or two of those a few years ago. I still remember the what was his name? He was the Hound, the private detective in Humpty Dumpty mystery.
Yep, I have no. I know if I went over to the shelves over there, I know I could find it. But yeah, it was the Humpty Dumpty mystery. That was interesting because I look, I try to like find the old pictures every once in a while.
Yeah.
And I just happen to like type it in online, and really a couple of things came up, but there is a video that somebody did, and I think it's the music that we learned from that CD. Somebody took that and cut in our pictures from our Humpty Dumpty mystery.
Oh, you know what? I know who that is. That's
okay.
Sam Stokes who wrote it.
Okay, that's who did it?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, he did that video.
But I couldn't believe it. I was just like, I'm on YouTube wearing a dog costume.
Cool.
This is my introduction to YouTube. All right, that's fine.
It could be worse. You could be a frog or
or a princess like I was the following year or whatever.
And I have pictures of that too. So maybe you should. I should send you those so you can post them on the podcast link.
That's fine with me. Do it.
I don't think you made a fine ugly stepsister.
Well, it was the first time you let me wear a goatee, I think.
There you go. Yeah. It was special.
Yeah,
it was special.
Sexy. Well, I think nothing got better than when they made the costumes out of that gold material around the armpits that then allowed everybody to see that we were sweating like crazy.
It was pretty. Yeah, it was good.
Yep.
It was nice.
Mm-hmm.
It was nice. Yeah. Children's theater at State Fair Community College should be phys ed requirement. It should follow at least a 1 hour, if not a 2 hour, phys ed class, which we don't require anymore. But
that seems unfortunate.
Yeah, that seems unfortunate. Yeah. But yeah. So I still. We had workouts and all kinds of stuff for children's theater. Yep. But anyway, this is the ADD part of me that I'll get off topic here. But I'm still on because we're doing a children's musical called Naked Mole Rat Gets Dressed, The Rock Experience. It's based on a children's book, and it's a fairly new one.
But can imagine them opening the program like, so what children's show are we going to see? Yeah. I don't think we should see this children's show.
Well, trust me, there's only basically pink onesies that the naked mole rats are wearing with hoodies. Okay. So it'll be fine. Yeah? Better. No nudity.
Yeah. Well, if you've seen Daffy Duck, you've already seen enough.
There you go.
You just got a coat.
I've been scarred by that for years. So Elmer Fudd killed me too. So. But basically, it's about this naked mole rat. In fact, they have a song at the beginning that says, "We're naked, 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 naked," that kind of thing. But it's like a rock concert. But the naked mole rat, all of a sudden, some of these clothes start falling into their molehill, and he starts putting on some clothes, and he likes it, but he's shunned by the other naked mole rats because he's dressing, and we're naked, we're not supposed to be that way. Yeah. So it's hilarious, but it's also kind of a cool thing, which I think we really need today. Is like accepting people who are different. Yep. So it's a cool musical, and then
I've forgotten what that sounds like.
Yeah. That's another story. And let me finish the season first before we get on this tangent. Right. So, and then we're doing Tim Wells, the technical director there at State Fair. He is doing The Diviners, which is a really cool show.
I've heard of that.
Yeah. Actually, your teacher in high school, Todd Schnocky, did it in college.
That's probably why I recognize it.
He's probably mentioned it. It's a really cool story. It's about a former preacher who comes into this small town, and they find out he is kind of burnt out of the preaching, and he tries to get away from it. But then he meets this kid named Buddy Lehman, who Buddy. His mother died saving him in a river.
Oh, wow.
She drowned. She saved him, but then she drowned, and she got carried away and was drowned. And so ever since then, Buddy has not been in the water. He has not taken a bath, doesn't want to get in the water. So so essentially C.C. Showers, the former preacher, starts to work with him and trying to get him to ease his anxiety about it and get in the water.
Gotcha.
And I'm not feeling like I'm giving anything away because they pretty much tell you at the beginning, a lot of the people in the town by the end of the show think it's a baptism. So they're all excited that now that C.C. Showers is going back to where he should be.
Gotcha.
But in the distraction, Buddy drowns.
Oh, jeez.
So it's not necessarily a happy show. It's a great show.
Right.
It's an incredible show, and it's funny, and it's got some really heart-wrenching moments. So it's kind of the show I kind of like, where it's something that's, if you can get them laughing in the first act, and then crying in the second act, to me, that's kind of a cool show, just thinking about things. And so, but it's incredibly theatrical. The cool part about it, I've seen it done a few times, but at the end, it's very much a sound and kind of light miracle as far as him going underwater and how the sound changes when he comes back up above water, because the sound of the people that are talking on the outside changes, and just the sound and the lighting is incredible. Just the lights and the moving gobos that they use to create the water there, and there's a distinctive line. And you know, Tim is great at lighting, so I think he'll do a great job with that. He's an incredible light designer. And then my retirement show is Spam-A-Lot.
Perfect.
So I've just decided that I'm going seriously cheesy.
That's fantastic.
And ending with Spam-A-Lot, and I don't know, make a cameo as the French taunter. So I'll use my very bad French accent, and so I'll have to work on it some.
No, don't. Don't at all.
Don't at all. Yeah. Your mother was a hamster, and your father smelled of elderberries. I wave my private parts in your general direction. That's the beauty of being bad comedy, is that I can just throw in a ha, and it's French.
Well, and that's the entire show. I mean, that's Monty Python. I mean, that's them.
Oh yeah,
that's it.
Yeah,
like, I mean, they're funny. I mean, it's English humor, but they're hilarious at times. But a lot of times, like, they're hilarious because it's so ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like, but yeah, that's one of the best characters to ever play, because you get to say all those lines.
Oh yeah.
And it's a short little thing. I saw somebody do a supercut of that scene with Tyrion going up to the walls of King's Landing and the last.
Oh yeah, I did.
Yeah. Tyrion's looking all serious, and he's hearing your father smells of elderberry. It's like, oh, I like this.
This is beautiful.
We should do this.
Yeah, it's weird how many, if you think about it, when you're looking for how many references there are to Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Oh, really?
Out there. Yeah, it's incredible. There's all kinds of cheesy little references to it.
Yeah.
And we got a guy who's going to get his arms and legs chopped off and say it's just a flesh wound.
Yeah.
So it's an incredibly heartfelt, deep show that goes into this character examination of it's cheesy.
It's fun.
2-dimensional.
Exactly.
Cheese.
Yeah, and people need that. They need that as much as the other thing these days.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I did She Kills Monsters, which is an incredible show by Qui Gwen. And it's just, I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's an awesome show, but it's basically about a young woman who's a teacher whose sister and parents died in a car accident 2 years before. And she is going through her room because she's finally moving out of the house. It's been 2 years. She's moving out of the house. And when she's going through the house, she finds this Dungeon Master guide and starts looking through it and finds this kid who knew her sister and gets him to take her on this adventure. And she finds out so many, and most people, I don't like Dungeons and Dragons or whatever, and think that, well, that's not something for me. But what's cool about it is she goes on this adventure and meets these characters that are representative of the real life people. I mean, this was part of their party that played the game. And she finds out a lot about her sister that she had no idea about, including one part where she finds out that her sister was gay, and she had no idea.
Yeah.
That, it ends with you actually fight a 5-headed dragon, which I had to learn how to make a 5-headed dragon out of EVA foam. I'll have to show you some pictures sometime. It actually came out pretty cool.
Fantastic.
But we had to make all kind of monsters and stuff, and so it was fun to do. A lot of fight choreography. It was hilarious, but it kind of comes to this 5-headed dragon at the end, and really what she's fighting is pretty much herself dealing with her grief.
Yeah.
And I think that dragon fight at the end was her dealing with the loss of her sister and getting to know her so much better just through playing this game.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite lines is she says to her sister, "You're not real," at the end of it, and she says, "But isn't what life is just a collection of stories? I'm just, I'm a collection of stories." So it's kind of about how she lived on, even as she played this game periodically as she got married and had a kid, and she would meet with some of the kids who were best friends, learning more and more about, Tilly. Yeah. So it's a cool. But so I figured after that, I'll just go for cheese.
Yeah.
Let's just go for pure, unadulterated aerosol cheese.
Yeah. Well, that's going to be a popular show, too. A lot of people know that show. That'll be a good one.
Yeah,
Get
I'm looking forward to it. And I think we may open it up to a few alumni. So,
Awesome.
You're a good singer.
I'm there.
Yeah, you're there. Yeah.
Your last show on that stage?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to say, if Tim needs any help building any of these sets, have him call someone that's not me.
Yeah, you weren't exactly a mainstay in the shop during shop hours.
No,
You're a great student.
Yep.
Good grades.
Yep.
Loved you, but
yeah, I told. I think I was telling Corey he was talking about. He's the Arts Asylum guy who was in the last episode. But I mentioned that I think at some point during either this podcast or the one that we recorded that the audio failed, and I was like, yeah, it was one of those things where I think by the end, like eventually, like after that, I became somebody that worked on houses and did a lot of projects. So like I got better post State Fair. But I'm pretty sure that even if I went back now, Tim would just like take the drill away from me. Play something like, no, I saw the table you made, and there's no way.
Yeah, no way. That's a bad thing about not seeing someone for a long time, is they kind of get stuck in that period of time.
Yeah. Well, that's, nothing quite like remembering somebody between 18 and 20 years old.
Yeah, it's not always our best moments.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and the first time away from home and all that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah.
It's interesting to think about, because I feel like my parents and I talked. I was like, I wouldn't change anything about it. Probably would have been more intelligent at the time, just with my personality, to maybe like make sure I was on campus rather than in my apartment that was across the street. But I honestly don't know if I would have gotten in any less trouble. And I wasn't ever even in trouble, except when I felt like I was.
Yeah. I don't know if I should tell this story or not.
Which one?
Oh, I'm thinking, okay, I'm retiring anyway. Yeah. What the hell? But, you remember when you had the apartment and I came over to the apartment and everybody was so excited because I was drinking a beer there. And it was kind of this insane thing where we thought, the cops were there. So it's kind of like, okay, this is the only person here. It's kind of like a hide Eric scramble. You know what I mean? It was
jump out the window.
Yeah, jump out the window. It'll be fine. Yeah. No, I remember that. I think I have a picture of that somewhere.
Oh yeah, me and you.
Yeah.
Holding our drinks. Did I say 18 to 20 or 18 to 20?
It was
18 to 21.
It was 21.
21.
It was yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
there
definitely.
was no one there. There was no one there under the age. There was supposed to be saying
not.
Things that were illegal. I think the statute of limitations is gone.
It's gone.
Yeah, so I think I'm good.
All of those people are 21 now.
There you go.
Yeah.
It's weird to think of you guys in your 30s. That's just kind of crazy.
It's got to be weird to think of me as a dad.
Like,
You have humans that rely on you? Oh, no.
I don't know if I can say this. You can edit it out if you can. But, you were doing as much practicing as you could for parenthood. You were a little wilder back in those days.
Yeah, I don't know what happened to that guy. I think he's still in there, just repressed. Probably because I'm just fucking tired all the time.
Yeah. Well, your wife is incredible. So, you got a great, and your kids seem great. So I always say there's a BC and an AC. There's before children and after children, and you really can't explain it to someone who doesn't have kids, because your life completely changes.
Yeah, and I always kind of had the assumption that would occur, but I was completely wrong on how it would.
Yeah.
So like I've seen people, and I mean I'm related to one of them, and I have friends that are this, but when they have a kid, everything changes, but everything changes in the sense of, well, now I have to pretend that I was never that person in the past, and that goes away. And I kind of look at that and I'm like, that my kids are going to be way too smart for that. They're going to be like, no.
They're going to figure that shit out.
Yeah. So I'm not exactly worried about changing certain aspects of my personality, but it is one of those things that's just like the one thing Nikki and I talk about on a fairly consistent basis is, how the hell did we have enough time to get everything done in our lives?
Oh, yeah.
And then go out and like spend a whole day just visiting restaurants and going to parks and just generally hanging out with friends. It's like we feel like by the time we get home, kids in bed, kids fed, in bed, or baths and all that kind of stuff, it's 8:30, and we still have to work, and then it's 10 and we're asleep.
Yeah.
Or, it's 11 or midnight or whatever it is. And then the next day, it's not like it starts up late. The next day, you're up at 6 o'clock in the morning because they're always up at 6 o'clock in the morning, so you are too.
Yeah.
And that's the weird one. And even having, I don't know if you had this, but going from 1 to 2, I think was even more dramatic than having the 1.
Yeah, in a lot of ways it is. Just because, we waited 4 years because our kids are 4 years apart.
Yeah.
And part of it was like, we had our daughter, Audrey, and she was incredible. I'm a little biased, obviously. She is incredible. She still is today. But in fact, I just had dinner with her last night.
Nice.
So we had a good conversation. But we thought, well, there's no way we can love another kid the same way that we love Audrey. So it took us those 4 years to kind of determine that. And then we had Ethan, and we found out, your capacity for love is it's infinite especially when it comes to your children.
Right.
It's kind of incredible.
Yeah. Some people try to test that because they just continue.
Yeah. We figured we had, one boy, one girl. We were done with the baby game.
Yeah.
You just didn't want to ever be outnumbered.
No.
So, in fact, I know from being one of, 4 brothers that I didn't want to have to raise somebody like me. And I have with Ethan. So,
Nice.
he's not quite as crazy as I was.
Yeah.
In college, but
That's good. Yeah, it was. I think 1 to 2 was interesting because we kind of had the same thing. We had a little bit of a different circumstance, I think, because Nikki, we had waited to have kids. We were dating and engaged for 3 years. We got married 3 years to the day after we met, and then I think, Connor's almost 4. So we waited 4 or 5 years into even being married to do that.
That's smart.
But we got to the point where it was like, okay, so we had Connor, and then Nikki basically said, if I'm 40 and pregnant, I'm going to be real pissed off. So we had a deadline. It's like, here's where it is.
Sounds like a lawyer there.
Exactly.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, exactly. If we haven't hit at that point, we're going to circle back to it. But no, the jury is not out on this decision. This is decided.
So Alex, get busy.
Oh, yeah. So we always had the mentality, because I've seen people who do this. It's like they stress and stress and stress and stress. And because of that stress, I'm sure that just puts a lot on your body chemically to not allow you to do that. So we were just kind of like, if it happens, it happens, whatever. So with Connor, it was, probably a year or so before we found out about him. And then with him, because he came so early, it was one of those things like, boy, that was terrifying. So we need to make sure if we do have another that we are, she was always by the book, but like by the book.
Yeah.
And so, we found out that we were going to have Archer, I think, 4 months before the deadline or something like that. And of course he comes early too, but he was 6 weeks early as opposed to 10 and a half. And he also came out at 6.5 pounds being that early. So it's like, he's healthy. We're good. It's fine.
Yeah.
We've got our 2. But Connor is this, like, just, even listening to his voice, like this sweet little boy. He's always just happy. If he has a tantrum or throws a fit, he's always sad afterwards. And then, he makes it up immediately, and he's always happy. And then we had Archer, and he is the climber. He is the terror. He's constantly upset unless he's wrestling with people. Just like, I'm raising 2 completely different children, neither of which I know if they take after me much. So I don't know whose influence is in there, but fun.
Yeah. And I'm sure your mom and dad are going, sweet revenge.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. We go to the lake, and we always have dinner and breakfast with them pretty much every day, unless we have too many people at each house. But if it's just, our fam, just the 4 of us and 2 of them, we'll always have dinner together. And we went down this last Friday night, and Connor was tired, which it was past, his bedtime by the time we were kind of ready to leave. And so he's just a little whiny, but he's fine. And Archer is just mad. And I'm just looking at Archer, and I can see my parents out of the corner of my eye just laughing hysterically. Like, oh, yeah, enjoy. So it's worth it, but it's like, Jesus, guys, come on.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And, when you're 18, 19, 20, it's amazing. I always love that. I always quote Mark Twain. I probably did when you were a student and still do. But it's amazing how stupid my parents were when I was 16 and how much smarter they've gotten since then. But yeah, all those things that they told you when you were younger and stuff they had to deal with me or you and your parents with you. It comes back.
Yeah.
And then you find yourself like that commercial where you're acting like your parents.
Yeah.
And it's kind of scary periodically.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I always think I had it in the back of my mind that even as a teenager, I think it was more my dad and I would kind of get into little scrapes and stuff like that. But that was because I was sarcastic and he will not put up with anything that even resembles sarcasm. And I haven't changed much. We just now have a mutual understanding of how far that line is.
Yeah.
And but I think it was a lot of my mom and I always got along really well. But I can definitely see her laughing just as hysterically as anybody else in the room.
Oh, yeah. It's good.
Do you remember that? Do you remember that one time that you said this and now you're doing the exact opposite?
Yeah,
I do. I do. I fully admit it, but I do.
That's funny. That's funny. Yeah. Well, with me and Ethan, it's kind of like when I was growing up. You really didn't survive with four boys in my family unless you were a smartass. And that was, our comedy. You still get the brothers together. And it's kind of insane. One, we're loud, we're obnoxious, and we laugh a lot. My mom's exactly the same. I mean, she's got this huge, obnoxious laugh. And
does your dad just sit there?
Yeah. Well, this is kind of the bad. My mom and dad were divorced when I was 9. I don't know if you ever knew that.
I did not.
Yeah, no, I didn't really have him too much there. It's not, I was going to say it's not like a sad story because I think I probably have a lot of attitudes that I would not have had I not been raised by a single parent.
Yeah, understood.
So, yeah.
Well, and it sounds like the one that didn't fit in wasn't there. Sounds like she was right there with you guys.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. She was pretty much there. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
And speaking of, I have no idea how single parents do it.
No, I don't. I mean, I've seen it.
Yeah.
Obviously firsthand, but I look back on it now and all the things I kind of took for granted. I'm like, how in the world did you deal with?
Yeah.
I mean, by the time, it's 3 brothers and I have a stepbrother, Brian.
Gotcha.
And by the time Brian came in the picture, my mom had remarried, but there was a good 7 years there where she was a single mom with 3 boys. And, my youngest brother is 9 years younger than me.
Yeah.
So, when they got divorced, he was 1 or 2 years old.
Man,
it was kind of crazy. And I feel bad for Brad sometimes. So he's an executive at a hospital now.
Only not too bad.
Yeah, he's not. Yeah, he's doing all right. He's doing all right. But I look back at him and man, we taught him all the worst that brothers could teach you. I mean, we felt like he needed to learn how to swear and some other things.
Yeah.
So we just felt our brotherly duty.
Yeah, of course.
And my middle brother and I are only 18 months apart. So we teamed up. It was always Mike's fault, though. It was never mine.
Never yours.
The middle brother, he was the instigator.
Gotcha.
I just decided that I should follow along just in a teamwork kind of effort.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
If it's going to happen, we might as well.
I might as well make sure it's safe.
Yeah.
And that as we're teaching him to say F you or fuck you or whatever.
Yeah.
So I was excited when I was listening to your podcast and I was going, you're swearing.
Oh yeah,
that's awesome.
Well, yeah, I can't turn I can turn that off in certain circumstances.
Well, you have to sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, but even like I don't think I'm gonna be one of those parents that's just like, okay, well, I have to make sure it's 100% clean around my kids because they'll do this. I don't think I could do that, but definitely like I shut it down a lot when Connor and Archer are around, or like especially when other people's kids are around. But no, on the podcast, like this is why I'm bringing people on that I can have a conversation with, is because I can say exactly what I want to say and how I say it.
Yeah.
And sometimes that comes off sounding like a complete moron, but I can cuss. So
actually, Chris, my wife, she had read a study that people who swear are more intelligent.
Then I'm
a genius. Look at me in rehearsal. I still feel like I played football and basketball. Wasn't great at either one of them, and a little bit of soccer in high school. So people still say I direct like a football coach. We just do it over and over, and you've experienced that.
Of course.
The infamous is let's just do that one more time.
Yep.
Which is a complete and total lie.
Yeah. How many one more times are we gonna have?
Even absolutely, this is the last time is not a a promise.
Yeah. It does seem like when you hit the last time, though, everybody knows. Like whenever I'm sure when people first start working with you, they realize that, like, okay, that's not what he means, though. That's one more time is not a one more time. But when you hit that last one, it's like you don't want to fuck that one up. Like when you hit the really, like, you've done it 7 or 8 times, and all of a sudden you do a scene, and everybody hits, like, okay, let's end that tonight. That was exactly what we need to end on, unless somebody fucks it up.
And I have a hard time finding the end of anything sometimes. It's kind of like I think it's a gift and a curse, but I think that the beautiful thing about theater is that it brings out so many things that you didn't know you were capable of doing.
Yeah.
Whether it's acting, directing, working on the set or lights or whatever. Mm-hmm. But there's, somebody there that kind of pushes you, or at least I hope pushes me. I mean, I had people who pushed me. Mm-hmm. And the bad thing about it is that I still look at shows that I direct and am satisfied, but I always look at it going, man, if I would have just helped them with this one thing or something else. And I kind of, as I've gotten older, because now I've been teaching for, this will be my 28th year of teaching, 20 years at State Fair. I know. I'm an old fart. Jeez, it's amazing I can still sit in this chair and we walk downstairs.
I wasn't commenting on your age. It's like you put up with 18 to 20-year-olds for that many years. Jesus.
For the most part, there's always the ones that I always feel like 18-year-olds kind of get a bad rap.
Yeah.
I mean, predominantly, I've worked with some really cool people.
Yeah.
I mean, there's been some every once in a while, and we could tell a few stories about some of the ones that we experienced. But even, the person that you're probably thinking of, first of all, if we're talking about Scapino, who was Scapino the first day, and by the second rehearsal, you were
no
Scapino.
longer Scapino.
Yeah, you were Scapino.
Yeah.
But even seems to be doing really well.
From what I've seen, it seems like he's doing really well. And he's reached out once or twice, once in like a group chat and once in an individual chat, and kind of said like what was going on was really messed up back then and apologized and that kind of thing.
And he did the same for me too.
That's great.
Really kind of cool.
Yeah, and I'm glad it seems like I think what he needed was one to kind of just get out of the element that he was surrounding himself with, and I really feel like he's in his heart of hearts, he's a very good person.
Yeah.
But he kind of needed to admit that he didn't have to be cool. Like, you can be a nerd. Because I think he was always a nerd that was trying to be, like, the cool guy.
Yeah. And he was definitely, and I think it's a badge of honor being a theater nerd.
Yeah.
I think we're all nerds to some extent. We all get, kind of weird about something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't care if you're an athlete. You're probably, I think of it as an athlete nerd. You know what I mean? So it's just that we kind of say that, nerd's a bad thing. In some ways, I think it's kind of a cool thing. And though it makes us interesting as a society is that we're all, excited about different things. Exactly. My wife is a management professor, and she deals a lot with supply chain. Mm-hmm. And it's fascinating to me. Just, we've had, and I never thought I think about it a little bit, but just the effects of tariffs and how much that affects the supply chain for certain products. And, just it's like that effect of you could be looking at your phone and it's come from, 30 different places or whatever where they got these parts are made and put together. And it's kind of a miracle of organization, how these things work and how it gets put together. So, and it's fascinating and how much it reflects the political situation.
Right. Well, it's always interesting to me because I look at that in, I'm sure, similar terms, but on the other side, I look at it as far as the supply chain goes as it's always amazing to me to see that business has one goal in mind, and that's to make money, whether it's for themselves or their shareholders. Mm-hmm. And so they're the people they want to create the most efficient system possible and have as little to do with, things being stopped or charged or anything else. Mm-hmm. So they're basically trying to deliver the cheapest product, the cheapest, best product that they possibly can. And again, this was the whole libertarian side of me was like, and then government steps in the way and is like, hold on, we know what we're doing. It's like, I've seen where you like. I know who you are. No,
Yeah.
you don't know any better than Warren Buffett. Okay, and Warren Buffett's guy that's working on logistics.
Uh-huh.
You don't know better than him. Calm
Well,
down.
one thing I love about if we go into politics here, the one thing I love about libertarians is at least you're consistent.
Yeah.
Most libertarians that
Right.
I've known. I don't know that it's completely realistic to be totally libertarian.
No, of course not.
I mean, the way we are now is as slowly as we change. But
Yep.
But I will say about the supply chain too is that I find it fascinating because I love Ben and Jerry's. Just when you find out, because she goes into the ethics of certain things. It's like the buy one give one. Are you putting an industry out of business by giving one away in a poorer country? I guess Tom's Shoes kind of started this buy one, give one, but it led to fewer jobs in the shoe industry. And I can't remember if it was a country in Africa or where it was, but it hurt their economy.
Yeah.
Because there were so many shoes coming in that were free that they weren't buying the shoes there.
Yeah.
So it's just all those things you have to think about. But, Ben and Jerry's has been an incredible philanthropic organization. And I've been to Chicago where they don't have plastics. They have, it was a vegetable-based spoon.
Yep.
That they used. And I went to another one in New York. We just got back from New York City. And they had wooden spoons there. So they're very environmentally conscious, and they seem like a pretty ethical organization.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's kind of been their MO since they started.
Yeah.
Started by a couple of hippies, and they just kind of kept that feeling going. It's interesting that you bring up the thing about them putting businesses out overseas, because I know there are like sock companies and shoe companies, which is Tom's.
Yeah.
And I think it's like, I can't remember what the sock company is, but anyway, they have the same kind of idea. And I think it's a wonderful idea, but when you bring up, like, what is that actually, like, what's the result, what's the unintended consequence?
Yeah.
And I watched and I really wish I could remember whose show it was, because I want to say it was John Oliver, but I think that's just because it was kind of in the same vein as his show. Here's where our world's fucked up, ha ha ha, now I'm off air. But they were talking about GMOs, and I think they're called, the government, like, they basically send aid.
Yeah.
So they show up to
I think
countries.
it was John Oliver, because I think I remember.
Okay.
Yeah, but go ahead. Sorry.
But it's just a wonderful episode, because they talk about the unintended consequences of helping. And they were talking about Haiti had just gotten them back, but it was when the GMOs left this other country. And they basically had just shipped rice like crazy to this country to keep people, fed and, stomachs full. And then the GMOs came, and they were giving all kinds of other stuff, like, things like just lighter fluid or kerosene, just so they could, like, warm their houses, light their houses, because the power grid had been shut down. And it just destroyed industries. Like, farmers just had to give up their properties and move to the city and basically move into hovels, because that was all they could do, because all their way of life got taken away. It's like, yeah, we have rice, but we don't have a livelihood.
Yeah.
And then when they left and went to Haiti, they just took all their shit and got out of that country, because they were like, well, we've been here for 5 years and helped you, but now we have new people to feed, so bye. And so basically it was just a couple of people came in, and they didn't have as much money as they probably needed. They're just like, let's buy these farms back from whatever bank that they're owned by, and start getting farmers up. And they were just barely starting to produce rice again and getting it produced. But it was like, thanks for coming in and helping, and don't get us wrong, we appreciate it, but you've got to learn the exit strategy too. You can't be here forever. And for GMOs, it's like, that's their basis of existence. If they're not giving somebody food, there's no reason for them to exist. Like, there's no reason for them to exist for a 4-year period of time if they only were needed for one.
Yeah. Yeah.
And no organization's going to do that.
And it's so hard to determine. I mean, I can't imagine, my wife does, I think she's an incredible teacher.
Yeah.
And she pushes her students, because she'll go through with these ideas that, what does it mean?
Right.
You're trying to, even if, and I'm not saying Tom's Shoes did it for the advertising or anything, but that's part of it.
Of course.
Sometimes there's organizations that do that just because it looks cool for them.
Yeah.
More so than helping someone else. But it's difficult to determine, because there's so many other factors when it goes in there. I'm not smart enough to know the right answer.
Right.
Because I think there's a lot of great organizations. I mean, I use passion planners, and part of it is just because I like the people. It's like a 27-year-old is the CEO who started it a few years ago, and I'm not an expert at them, but they have a buy one, give one, and they usually have people
nice.
from high schools and things that will write grants for their students,
Awesome.
for planners. But I think it's just kind of a cool organization, and I'm weird like that. I like to know where my stuff is coming from,
Right.
and I'm, probably a hypocrite in some aspects of where I get things and what I do. But I think we all are a little bit.
No, because nothing tastes like a quarter pounder with cheese.
Oh, yeah.
That's where I realized I'm the biggest hypocrite ever.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I started going granola a couple of years ago, where I was just like, what I want to do is I want to grow my own food. And probably 3 weeks after that, I was like, but I really want a fucking cheeseburger right now.
Oh, God, yeah. I usually, in fact, I've done pretty well over the years. Even when you were a student, I would have McDonald's once every 6 months, unless it was just a coffee. I might go in and grab a coffee because they actually have pretty good coffee.
Yeah, they do now.
And unsweetened iced tea is usually pretty good. The sweetened tea has more sugar in it than I think you're type 2 by the end of one cup of coffee or 1 cup of sweetened iced tea. But I just I really try not to eat there because heck, gosh, now Chris and I always have yogurt, Greek yogurt, and granola and some fruit in the morning is kind of our staple breakfast. And then
my wife is just going to start driving to your house if that's what you guys have.
Well, that's
every
cool.
morning.
We like you guys. So you can come on over, and we like the little ones. So our kids aren't going to have any grandkids anytime soon.
I'll just
so,
leave out.
They just want to come out.
I'll give you guys an Irish goodbye at that point, though.
Yeah.
You like them, do you?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're not doing daycare. That's not a thing. We even said to our kids, we're not doing daycare. No daycare. This is not, grandpa or granny daycare. This is, we would love to have you for a visit. That'd be awesome. But yeah, so I think that we've had salads and all that kind of stuff. Just about every meal, so I think I'm eating healthier, although you can't necessarily tell by my waistline that I'm eating healthier.
You're always tall and thin, though, so it works out.
Yeah,
Just wear bigger shirts. It'll be fine.
There you go. Yeah, just have the Untucked revolution was just a beautiful thing.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah, and now there's a company that's called Untucked or something.
Yeah, I saw that. I was almost going to buy a shirt from them because they allowed it to be untucked, but they didn't do like a dress shirt where it's at your knees.
Yeah.
Because anytime I see that look, I'm just like, well, I can't pull that off because all of my stuff's like traditional dress stuff.
Yeah.
From back when I wore a suit every day.
Yeah,
I know.
You should be getting a kickback from Untucked and Ben and Jerry's.
Just put an affiliate
maybe
link.
not from Tom Shoes, but the others. You're probably good.
Yeah, Tom Shoes, thank you, and also fuck off.
Yeah. Damn it, you bastard. At least you have an attorney in the family, so if you get sued.
I should be like, that's not the law I practice, and you should probably not talk about
that kind
big
of
companies.
Yeah. It's all good. It's all good.
Yeah, that's thinking about McDonald's. I was thinking about, do you ever listen to Joe Rogan or any of his stand-up or anything like that? He was the Fear Factor guy.
Oh, yeah. I've heard a little bit, but not much,
He does UFC fights, and I probably listen to his comedy, and I've seen most of his stand-up, and there's like 50 to 60% or so that I'm like on the floor laughing because it's just so ridiculous. And then the other, it's just like you're going off the deep end here a bit. And but he had one joke about, do you boycott, in one of his stand-up specials. It's like, do you boycott? I don't boycott. It's like if somebody came up to me and was like, dude, you shouldn't buy Nikes. Do you know who's making them? It's like, well, they're really good though. I mean, whoever that is, I feel bad for them, and they should quit if they're not making enough, but really comfortable shoes. He's like, if they started advertising like the terrorist network for cell phones, it was like he's making, because it's like, how is Osama bin Laden in a cave? And now we know he wasn't, but how is he in a cave and he's got, full coverage in order to make a phone call halfway across the world? It's like, full bars in a cave?
I'll buy that. Yeah. When I was in, this is weird how these conversations go from several different directions.
Yes.
So it's probably exciting that I am, and I am ADD. I was diagnosed in my 30s, but and I think it's perfect in theater because you're kind of going 5,000 things at the same time, and you're going, I gotta, there's hyper focus moments which are beautiful, but. I'm trying to think where I was going with that. Where was I going?
I assume you were talking about your time in the Army. When you were over there. Because we're talking about.
No. Actually, I was in Swaziland, Africa, and
was that the trip you took when I was there?
Yeah, probably.
Where you had like really bad. What do they call that? Where you can't get your time zones back.
Oh yeah, I had. horrible. Jet
Jet
lag.
lag. Yeah. Because I think you were tired for like 3 weeks.
Well, yeah. But remind me, I'll tell that story.
Okay.
But there, we had cell phones when we were going out. It was a mission trip, and we were planting gardens. And we would go out, and we had cell phones. There really wasn't plans in Swaziland. Mm-hmm. You just have to. They were just the prepay phones.
Yeah.
So you got to any
top-ups.
convenience store, and you would just buy, and they were extremely cheap. And we'd be out in the middle of nowhere and have incredible reception.
Of course.
I thought, wait a minute, this is a third world country, has cell phones that has a hell of a lot better reception than I ever had with AT&T or whoever.
Yeah.
Now I'm contemplating consumer cellular because it sells to seniors, so
Hey.
that scares me just a tad.
Has the big buttons.
But it also has the big button. I can't see those buttons anymore. But yeah, so I was fascinated by that.
Yeah.
That I was like, they could be 20 miles away because we were out in the middle of pretty much nowhere.
Yeah.
And it was crystal clear. Like, wait a minute, I can't. I'm driving home from Sedalia to Blue Springs and hit a dead spot.
Oh, yeah.
And I
Yeah.
lose a call right around Knob Noster. So I'm like, okay.
Yeah. And I'm wondering if it's like the old cell phones didn't have all the crap that's in them now.
Yeah.
But I'm also kind of wondering, like, is it just because there's nothing interfering with that signal? Like, if you had a signal that was just shooting across, but not 5 million Wi-Fi networks at every Starbucks and house along the way, then I don't know. Because I have like 4 bars normally down here pretty consistently, and then I'll go over by like the steel beam and it'll just drop out. Like, oh well, that's good. I'm glad I'm spending the money that I am to have a steel beam interfere with my signal.
Yeah, but it's all cheap. I mean, it's incredibly cheap. So, yeah. 4,000 service charges. Whatever.
Yeah, my plan was 60, and I got charged my leg.
Yeah. I like it.
So what about the jet lag story?
Well, the jet lag story was, I don't know if it's interesting to anybody but me, but, I decided I had this great plan because it was about a 12-hour difference. And I thought, you know what? I will stay up all night and then sleep because we would have a 6-hour bus ride to the airport in Johannesburg. And so I thought, okay, well, I'll stay up all night. I'll sleep on the bus. That's a good 4 to 6 hours that I could probably get there. And then I'll sleep some on the plane, and it'll get me back on the schedule. The problem is that I'd met a lot of awesome people while I was there. And you kind of know me. I'm an extroverted introvert.
Yep.
Which seems like an oxymoron completely. But I love people, but I've always been, personally, I've kind of just tried to learn to be an extrovert.
Yeah.
But we talked all night, and then we thought, well, I'd be fine. I talked to everybody all night, and then I get on the bus and see other people that I met while I was there, and so
you ended up
talked
going on a
6
bender.
hours. Yeah. So I didn't sleep probably for a good 30 hours somewhere in there, and I'm even then, that was a few years ago.
Yeah.
Even then, I still had to have my sleep. So, I'm pretty worthless. Some people would say all the time, but I'm pretty worthless if I get less than 6 or 7 hours of sleep. 7's kind of my sweet spot. There.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so it was not pretty.
No. I just remember you came back and it's like, I'm just gonna get through this. And I was like, no, you're not. not from what I'm seeing.
That's what I always know. That when the students are giving me that poor Eric look, I'm like, oh man, I must be too tired or something.
And Nikki and I, we went on a trip to Italy a few years ago. It was probably a year before I think we had Connor. It was a great trip. My parents went, her parents went, the two of us, and it was just this. We flew into Rome, and we got there at like 9 a.m., which you would think would be great. It's like you spend all day in Rome.
Yeah.
What ended up not being great was that everybody had been on a flight for 9 hours and then getting to the hotel and seeing the tiny room that we had to stay in, and so everybody needed a drink, a really stiff drink at that point. And Nikki and I are fine, but I'm watching everybody else like kind of pace in this little coffee shop. Mm-hmm. It's like, we've got to find something. I don't at this point, it could be warm beer and nobody's going to care. And so we ended up getting through 2 hours where everybody was mad. And then finally at like 11 o'clock local time, found this little side of the road boutique. I think they just had terrible snacks, but they had cold beer. It was like the first sip made everybody else happy. Like, okay, now we're in Rome. We're good to go.
Yeah,
everybody's fine.
We're good to go.
Yeah, but yeah, I ordered an American coffee, which I figured would be like, here you go, you fat fuck. Here's your giant cup of coffee. And it came out as a teaspoon of coffee. It's like this little bitty cup. It's like, oh, like I haven't even eaten in a couple of hours. So it's like, I know this is just pure espresso.
Yeah.
And I shot it, and it was the strongest coffee I've ever had. And so I'm like, okay, so we got to find this. We got to find this. We got to find. But we were there for 3 days. And the first night, we had gotten in, obviously at 9. We spent all day in Rome, went back, just kind of hung out. And we didn't have like a late night. We didn't have an early night. It was like we just kind of found a place to eat, went back, and the next morning, or I think it was actually like at noon the next day, we had the tour of the Colosseum and kind of that entire Colosseum area.
Yeah, cool.
And so we were really excited. That was like the one reason I wanted to really do this trip. It's like I want to tour that. And they had areas where like most tourists can't get to, so they'd get you under the Colosseum and everything. So we're doing this, and it's like, okay, cool. So we go to bed. We get a call from my mother-in-law. And Cheryl's like, you guys okay? Like, yeah, we're fine. We're totally disoriented. I have no idea.
Oh, sure.
We just woke up. And Nikki, I hear Nikki on the phone, and I'm just like, who knows? Maybe they want to meet for breakfast or something. And she was like, okay, and she just immediately starts freaking out. And I was like, what? She's like, what time is it? And I grab my phone, and it's 11:55. Like, they're there waiting for us. And this tour hasn't started yet, but they're getting ready to. So we're a 10-minute cab drive from there. We are, I mean, I'm in like I said, we just crashed. So I'm in like shorts and a T-shirt. Yeah. And it's Italy, so I'm like, well, I don't want to be in shorts and a T-shirt. I want to look good. So we threw on everything, didn't shower, did the throw water in your hair and just pray that it looks okay. We
hope you got enough, cologne or body spray to cover
exactly
up
whatever I smell like. Yeah. So, and it's like June in Rome, so it's pretty warm.
Yeah.
Like it's not stifling, but it's not. You can't get away with having BO. And so we got there, and my dad had been talking to the guy, and everybody who knows my dad knows he can like sweet talk people and just be the nicest guy in the world.
Cool parents.
Oh, yeah.
You got cool parents.
Great parents. And so my dad's talking to this guy, and they're like 20 minutes late starting their tour because of us. And we pretty much got in the cab, and we just like threw money at the guy, like, get to the Coliseum now. Like, I don't care what you have to do. So he just takes off, wheels.
Nothing like a near-death experience.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
In another country.
He didn't even need coffee that morning.
Yeah. I don't need espresso.
So, yeah, we pulled up across the street, like across the highway where they get to the Coliseum, and my parents had grabbed like our radio thing so that the guy could talk into it and kind of do the tour. But, yeah, it was like 15 people that saw the two of us and were just pissed off. But we ended up figuring out that we slept for something like 17 hours just straight.
Yeah.
So we were fine. Like, we felt no jet lag. It was just because we slept an extra 7 hours than we should have.
They'll take care of it pretty well.
Yeah. So that's my only experience with jet lag. That was it. It was nothing special. It was just a weird, crazy cab ride and getting mean stares for the first 30 minutes of a tour. That's about it.
I think the weirdest thing I ever had is my ex-wife had a job in Australia, and it was weird that we left. When you go there, it's a 16-hour difference. But when we went back home, we got there before we left.
Oh, that'd be strange.
That was pretty wild.
Yeah.
That was pretty wild.
Yeah.
So, but it was a cool trip. We were in Melbourne, Australia, and it's kind of like, I think you guys talked about it in your last podcast. It's kind of like, the more people you meet, the more you realize, we got a lot of similarities. There's differences, obviously,
right?
But there's a ton of similarities.
Yeah,
and I think that's cool.
It is. I mean, I think it's one of Mark Twain's lines, and I'm glad that you're here because you can probably actually fact check me on that. But it's one of his lines where it's like, if you travel, it'll cure that. Like, if you don't understand somebody, travel.
Yeah.
Because you will. And it's amazing. It really is an amazing thing. Like when we went to, the first place I ever went out of the country was when I think it was 3 months after I met my wife, we were like, you know what we should do? Get our families together after we'd been dating for 3 months and just put all these people that have never fucking met and go to Costa Rica for a week.
Cool.
Like, yeah, cool.
Yeah,
I'm sure that will work out.
It'll be bonding or end it here.
Well, yeah, we actually had the conversation before. We're like, so if we decide that we're breaking up, we have to pretend that we're together. And it's like...
It's kind of like casting a show.
It really is.
That they're dating.
Which you have
that
experience
they're
with.
still dating, by the end. So.
But yeah, so it was one of those things, and it obviously ended up fine, and our families have been very close since we've met, which is great. Very lucky, but great. But yeah, we went down there, and I'd never been out of the country. I mean, I'd barely been out of Missouri. So I'd been to New York with my mom. I'd been to California with my aunt. And, New York and San Francisco, while they're wonderful places, are not out of the country. New York feels more like that than anywhere else, but you can still go and get you can go to an English language restaurant. Where we went in Costa Rica, there were several expats that owned different bars. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, we were in just a town.
Yeah.
So you'd go, and it was like, Nikki was, when she was in college, she was pretty much fluent in Spanish. Mm-hmm. And so I would just hand the menu to her sometimes. Like, this is kind of what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
That's it. But, I mean, you met all these locals that are just, they're living their life. They're their houses are over here. They're over here. They're over here. And you go into, we stayed in a beach town called Manuel Antonio. But the main town that was about a 20-minute drive in was called Capos, and it's just it's in the middle of this beautiful valley. But to call the town beautiful would be untrue.
Yeah.
But I think we freaked the town out because it was, me, my dad, and my brother-in-law, who are at the time especially were very much consumers of beer. We enjoyed our fair share. Mm-hmm. And then, Nikki, my mom, and Bill and Cheryl would either drink beer or they'd have something else. But we would literally go into this like Walmart subsidiary grocery store in the middle of Capos, and I think we terrified everyone because they just had like the old like Sam's Club like 24 carton.
Yeah.
And they just had those, and we're like, okay, so how much do we need for today? Like, probably should get 6 of these, right? Okay, cool. And so we'd go, and they just
the
look
fact
at
that
it.
You didn't die from alcohol
Oh, I know,
on
yeah.
this trip is a minor miracle.
Well, that's the best part. So most of it down there, at least from the ones that we were drinking, because we're all beer pansies too. Like, we're not drinking Guinness.
Yeah.
But it was
I don't like beer I can chew. So.
Exactly. So we were drinking like Imperial Light, which Imperial Light was like a 5 to 6%, so it was pretty low ABV. But there was one, and it was the really good one, was Bavaria Light. Mm-hmm. And Bavaria Light I will never forget because each individual can, and it was probably like each individual 6-pack, but it really felt like each individual can had a different alcohol volume. Mm-hmm. So you'd pick up one and be like, oh, this is 3.2 beer. And then the other one would be like 7.
Yeah.
Like, what crazy monkey is making this beer? Like, what zoo are they making this out of? Because nothing is consistent at all. But it would just crack me up. And, of course, like they ran out of Bavaria Light for a couple of days, and I was really sad because it was like, no, this is the most entertaining part of the beer experience down here.
Yeah, it's just varying your levels.
Yeah,
and
you have no idea.
You can disguise the beers and not know which one is which
exactly.
until you've drank a few of them. So, yeah.
Yeah, so it was – but, I mean, it was a fun trip. But, again, like we saw the locals that were there. It was right in the middle of an election, so we got to see like, oh, everybody's as psychotic about elections as we are. Mm-hmm. And maybe even more so because they had like – I mean, everybody was wearing like the color, that was kind of the color of their guy.
Yeah.
And it was kind of insane. But we went there and then going to Italy, same exact thing. I mean, even on the trips we've gone to Mexico where we're staying at resorts that are without question there for tourists from the U.S. or Britain or Australia, mm-hmm. You're still meeting people, you're still talking to people, unless you just completely stick your nose up at people. You're gonna meet some of the guys and gals that are working there.
Yeah,
and they're all wonderful people. It's like
I think it's just cool just to go somewhere and just start up a conversation.
Yeah,
I mean, we were just in New York, and here's me eavesdropping. There was an actor who was in Ink, mm-hmm. which is really kind of a cool story. It's on Broadway now. I think it's closing in early July.
Yeah.
But it's kind of the story of the son. It's not really about Rupert Murdoch, but Rupert Murdoch is a prominent member of the story, but it's more about the editor that took it to the number one paper when it was like number 5, of the papers, and really just, for lack of a better term, and probably not a correct one, but the redheaded stepchild of the newspapers, and took them to number one, not necessarily by ethical methods. I mean, the thing that finally put them over the edge was, a wife of one of the executives was kidnapped and eventually killed, and they followed that story. And
dear God,
there's some people that say that it might have been. Now, I don't know how totally historically accurate this is.
Right.
Because I don't know the story well enough to say, yeah, it's absolutely. But at least portrayed in the play, they kind of led you to believe that some of this coverage had something to do with her being killed.
Gotcha.
Or at least the people that had kidnapped her, made references to that.
Okay.
And then, what put them over the edge was putting a nude woman in the paper. So
Smart.
they were trying to take over the mail.
Yeah.
And they did with this one newspaper. But we were in a little diner that was close to our hotel where we were staying. And I just listened to a guy who was talking about acting in a show. And I said, really, what show are you in? And he said Ink. So it looked interesting to me, but it wasn't something that Chris was necessarily crazy about.
Right.
But we went to it just because he said, so I kind of made a conversation with him and the guy that was at the table they were talking to, and said I teach theater and stuff like that, and eventually got a backstage tour.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and so it was cool. I mean, and it's really, there's a lot of opportunities that you can have just if you're willing to kind of break the ice.
Right.
With someone, get to know someone.
Well, I think we all have connections to each other in one way or another. I mean, you can find the most opposite of you individual in the world and still find something that you guys like.
Yeah.
So, but that's I mean, I'm sure he probably likes that because I've got to say anybody that I've ever known that's either acted, even if it was minor, one play, something like that, there is something different about your director than there is about any other teacher.
Yeah.
There just always is. It's like, kind of like you're, the one elementary school teacher that you really remember. It's like you have an affinity to that person more than you do everybody else. But it's always been like that with directors because, you really do. I mean, you spend a lot of time together.
Yeah.
I mean, and especially if you're ever lucky enough to have, a role where you're a pretty prominent character, you're one of the leading characters or, kind of bigger supporting characters, you're there a lot.
Yeah.
And I think that when you have a director, and you were always so good about this, when you have a director that knows that you're in it just as much as they are, there's a lot of respect there. It's like, because I would always look at it like, that's what I was saying earlier when we were upstairs. It was like, I always just knew like once per show, you were going to go off. And it's like, well, and it was never a negative thing.
Yeah.
It's always like, probably because the guy's teaching classes, directing, taking care of all the other stuff. You were the director of the theater department, so on your weekends you're also going and like seeing plays with the people that you're trying to recruit to bring into the program.
Yeah, sure.
And we decided today to like fart in the middle of a scene or something just dumb.
Yeah.
It's like, of course he's going to get pissed off. Like he's a little stressed.
Yeah.
But then, I mean, and there's so many people that are like this. It's like you blow your top, come back the next day, everybody's fine. It's done. But don't get offended. Like that's the biggest thing. It's like we're all in this together. And again, I think that if you're lucky enough to be in one of those roles where you're just on set a lot, you have that respect because you see that like you feel like you're on set a lot. They're on set all the time.
Yeah.
And so that was always with me, whenever you and I would work together, that's where I was always I just never minded stuff like that. And Mr. Beam was the same way.
Yeah.
And
I love Mike Beam. He's just incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a cool guy.
He was a great director. We always had a good relationship. But I mean, when we did Anasazi, which is, we always kind of, laugh a little bit about because there was some just crazy moments in that show. But, the show had 33 musical numbers. We had a huge set. It was a 2-act play that should have been 3 because it was just such a massive production. And it's a musical, so now you're talking about not only 33 songs, but 100 people, it felt like, on stage and around stage, and a band and everything else. And so, like, I think that time he went off 2 or 3 times. Not to me once or twice, but it was like there would always be those moments where it would happen. It's like, it's okay. Like, this is what, like, we're all stressed.
Yeah.
Let it happen.
Yeah.
Like nobody's mad at you.
Yeah.
Just let it go. And honestly, that's part of what I like, because then you become human.
Yeah.
Like it humanizes everybody to each other. And so, when you have a bad day, guess what? That's part of them doing their job as a director as well. And this is all to basically tell you, this is why I never could I could never be a director. I have two children, and I can't handle them sometimes. I can't imagine dealing with 20.
I can handle college students better than I can my own children. And I don't know that I handle college students. I just, I think, like we, talked about before, I think that there's an incredible amount of good young people.
Yeah.
And there are a lot in the arts.
Yeah.
Because really, if you're involved in the arts, in most of the arts, it's just a labor of love.
Yeah.
If you're in any of it, whether it's acting or whatever, for the money, then at least in my opinion, you shouldn't do it.
Right.
Because it's something that you do because your body, your mind, your soul tells you have to do it.
Yeah.
I call it the love-hate relationship.
Yeah.
With theater, that I always maybe had a little chip on my shoulder. I've always been an underdog person. So that's why, I rooted for the Royals. They win a World Series every 30 years. No
exactly.
So by the time I'm in my 80s, my gosh, I will have another one.
Uh-huh.
We'll have another one. And, I root for the Chiefs, which I wasn't even a Chiefs fan the last time they won the Super Bowl. Oh, they came close. Don't even want to get into that. But
D Ford. I think a lot of people in Kansas City were like, it's probably good that you're gone.
Yeah.
Love you, but it's probably good that you
But
you
let's
left.
face it, the defense sucked.
The defense was awful.
Yeah.
And
So
that proved it.
Yeah. But
I was at that game.
Oh, were you?
It was, if you
Freaking cold too.
Yeah, so my brother, it was me, my brother, and two of his buddies, and we were there. It was completely cold. We didn't move the whole time. I actually missed overtime. I had to leave when we did the coin flip because I was so cold that I was not going to go up into the main area, the walkway, because it was just like sheer wind was going through it. And it was cold. I was like, I'm not going to pee. And when they got the coin flip or the coin toss, I was like, I know it's going to happen. I'm out.
Yeah.
Like, because I'd seen the
I
defense
was doing
already.
the same thing on TV.
Yeah.
But
But I posted a picture. I can't remember if it was on Instagram or if I posted on Facebook too. But I'm in my dad's stadium jacket, which has been to like every one of the big games because they were all cold games. But I've got his stadium jacket and like 4 layers on top and bottom on top of the jacket.
Yeah.
And my brother had gone out, and thank God he bought these like Mortal Kombat masks.
Yeah.
So if you look at that picture, it's Brady's head right there, and you see this guy in a giant red coat and a like Sub-Zero Mortal Kombat mask. That's me.
Oh, I'm about to go back and look at it.
Yeah,
now,
you'd never notice if you had it. Like there's not even enough on my face to see that I have eyes. Really, it's just a little bit to show you.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't one of those games where you're like, oh, Alex is in the background. It's like some fat guy in a red coat's in the background. Like, oh no, he's just got 70 layers on.
70 layers on. So yeah. I'm gonna go back and look at that. I had a friend in college who said he was in the Blues Brothers. And there's like this moment where it's not listed in there. Some guy is dancing on a table, and it kind of looked like him.
Yeah.
But I always thought he was full of shit.
Yeah, you're like, you just found somebody that you look like.
You kind of like, because he danced on the table for like a second and a half and fell.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He said, that was me. I'm not sure.
Well, based on the behavior, yes. But
yeah, but not necessarily. Yeah. Okay. Maybe. Yeah. Maybe. I still don't know this day if it was really him, because I've looked at the credits and everything, and there's no guy dancing on table.
Yeah.
Which,
damn it.
Yeah. So I don't know what's happening there. Yeah.
But so what? So when you're looking back at, since this is going to be your last year, like you said, you're going to do your last show. Like your time, you were at, what was the college that you were in that was?
I was at Crowder College.
Crowder College.
92 to 2000.
That's right. And then you came to State Fair, and you've been there since. So you have quite the career there. And when you look back at the shows, I don't want to say like what's your favorite cast or what's your favorite moment or anything like that, but what is kind of are there things that stick out?
Oh, sure. I mean, there's always things that stick out. I mean, I think of really, and not just schmoozing you because I'm talking to you.
I would never worry about that.
Never worry about that. Yeah. Always schmooze, Alex. But I think of, like that experience with Scapino,
Yep.
where you were not cast as Scapino the first day, the
Yep.
read through, but you were cast as Scapino the second day.
Yep.
Because at that time, and I still kind of have this attitude of, if you're not going to do what you said you would do and be responsible for it, I mean, I think I can be understanding about certain things, but
Yep.
This guy, and I don't want to get into details of
Right.
the story, but I knew what he was doing that night, and he came
Right.
back with a bullshit story, and so I thought it was a good lesson for him, but I also was proud of you because I think you kind of stretched yourself to do some things that you hadn't done
Yeah.
before.
That was without question my favorite show that I've been in.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I have wonderful memories of certain shows. I mean, even in, going back to high school, being in Guys and Dolls, that being the first time, and I remember the moment I came out on stage for the first time. I remember being on Asazi and some of the weird stuff that happened there, but just like kind of knowing that the cast took 33 songs and made it. I mean, that was
Yeah.
more than Jekyll Hyde.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a crazy show to put together in a very short period of time. I mean, we had doing Over the River was fantastic because
Yeah,
again,
that's
cast
still one of my
was-
favorite shows.
Yeah, and the cast that we had was incredible.
Yeah.
And so, like, I was just very happy to do some of those. And, even, like, there's probably only one at State Fair that I can say was not my favorite, which you probably know the one. But, like, even when I came through and, like, Mike came in and did Dark at the Top of the Stairs,
Yeah.
it's, like, probably not a show I would normally pick off the shelf, but it was fun because, like, here's my high school director directing me in my first college play.
Yeah.
That's awesome. But with Scapino, like, I read the role that you had me initially cast as, and the guy who took it over did a great job, but it was like, on paper, I was like, well, yeah.
And it was Jesse, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
And so Jesse
And
took
it was
it
a great
over.
opportunity for him.
Yeah, and he
had
stretched himself too.
Yeah,
Yeah, that individual kind of messing up ended up being a good thing for the acting quality, I think, of everybody there because everybody kind of had to shift around and do their thing. But, I read the script for that role and was like, of course that's the role I'm going to get cast in.
Yeah.
But then with Scapino, I'm reading through that, and I remember about a week in, we hadn't worked on it at all, and you're like, we're not going to worry about the Italian accents. Just do what you're going to do. Because that's at this point, this is going to be a complicated enough show that because there's so many little pieces.
Yeah.
That was the thing I'll never forget. It's like all just the little moments, like me and Jesse being on top of that like 12-foot rafter,
Yeah.
pretending to play the ukulele and singing a song, or
And you got to
everything.
beat Trevor Belt with a 3-foot sausage.
Exactly.
So,
I remind him about that all the time.
Oh, yeah. I need to dig out that picture because I know the exact picture. I just, it's not every day that
No.
people get to beat someone else with a foam sausage.
No, it's not. And it's not every day that you have a director that's nice enough to let you take a couple of outtake pictures
Yeah,
that allow it to look as inappropriate as possible.
absolutely.
But yeah, the moment that I remember from that show, as far as rehearsal is concerned, because it was just a fun show overall to do, when you get the crowd involved in the end and everything else. But was the moment where, because Anchorman had like just come out, and I looked under the bridge and said, "Bark twice if you're in Milwaukee," when Trevor was coming on stage, and I meet him, and it's one of those moments where he's coming slowly and I come up fast, but we both meet at the same time, and we're like 2 inches apart. And I will never forget that we were supposed to really have that part down, and I said that, and it was new, and we hit that moment, and I just see Trevor completely break, and so I started laughing, and you may or may not have come up and hit me on the back of the head. Like, okay, that's hilarious.
I have never done that in my entire career. I don't know
Not
what you're
one
talking about.
time.
Not one time. What scares me is that, let's just clarify this in case the authorities are listening.
Oh, yeah.
It's really a light tap.
It's,
on the back of the head. And what's weird is that some students, after a while, it's kind of like a rite of passage for some weird reason. It's just, it's just kind of a flick of the wrist on the back of their head, and they'll come over and they'll lean their head down.
I did that.
I
did that all the time.
and they still do it now. I'm like, really, this is probably not in any of the books about pedagogy. It just doesn't have anything in there as far as how teaching methods. But
I think there is something to it because I mean, as odd as it's going to sound, it's like in some ways, like you said, it's a rite of passage, but it's almost like it's an endearing thing. I mean, it really is. Like this is not. It's not like you came up and just smacked somebody. It's like it's this little like, that's it, and.
Much
Especially,
like the shoe incident, but we won't go into that.
You guessed my favorite show.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was another interesting one. But yeah, but the tap is just, I mean, that was a rite of passage without question. I think I got 1 or 3 of those every single show. But it was always, and I mean, most of the time it was always something like that where it was just like, you know better.
Yeah.
Stop it.
Or somebody just say something, stupid or whatever. So yeah. If I ever got angry, it was the vein that shows up in the forehead, and
know it well.
Yeah. You've seen it a few times.
Yeah, I just always shut the fuck up when I saw you getting mad. It was like, not gonna yell directly at me.
Yep.
Like you can be mad at the cast, and you're never gonna get mad directly at me because I'll see that and just go, okay, I really have to focus right now.
Yeah. Well, I have this great. She just graduated, and she's going to University of South Dakota. She's doing North Dakota Shakespeare right now.
Oh, nice.
And yeah, I think her show may have already closed, but if not, it's got another week or something like that. But she's an incredible young woman. Was a gymnast in high school. Ended up breaking her back, and became took that really, as far as I can tell, never ever. I'm sure she did. She had to have felt sorry for herself because she was pretty close to a world-class athlete. Her sister is at OU.
Oh, yeah.
And she actually has and it's officially called the dowel, a move in gymnastics that's on the scorecard now. That I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's really kind of cool. But Lauren was kind of like that. But, she's just one of those people that's just incredible. Yeah. Incredibly positive. And even she's got a flick on the back of the head. Of
course.
But, but we were talking about the things when I would get upset and talk, and she said, I did gymnastics for however many years since she was 7 or 8 years old. She said, this is nothing.
No.
Compared to that. I mean, people are getting kind of sensitive about it. And I don't think I ever, I've said some things that I regret over the years, like everybody does
of course.
When they get upset. But I think most people know that it's out of, we could go into psychology, but just my desire we talked a little bit about, and I never finished the thought, but about being an underdog, that I've always felt like teaching for State Fair Community College, because just by the name, it doesn't get a ton of credibility. I personally think it's a good school. Yeah. I really do think it's a good school, and I think we work really hard in the theater program. And but it's like I don't want people to come to a show and think that it's pretty good for a community college show.
Yeah. I think one of the greatest things that State Fair has going for it, I mean, because the staff is amazing. You guys have always put together amazing sets and costumes and everything.
Pay you later.
Yeah, no, there's a reason I went. But
you got a scholarship. That was the first reason, because you've always been financially.
I've always been
financially sound. So,
yeah, but no, really the big thing was, and again, this is also part of recruitment. If you talk about that, is you walk into that theater and go, I get to act here.
Yeah.
This is
a beautiful
great
theater.
Yeah, and it's not too big, it's not too small, but it's amazing. You can be on stage, and you can, as long as you know how to do it, you can project your voice out, and you don't have to really struggle because it's not huge.
Yeah.
I mean, Mr. Beam always had that complaint about Ray Peck's theater, because when they were building it, and he was part of the process, but when they were building it, they said, well, we need not only a theater, we need a conference area.
Yeah, those multi-purpose centers.
And he hated it. Yeah. It's like, it doesn't give you the sight lines you need. Yeah, it's short to the back, but it's really wide, so that means it's a wide set.
It's a really curved area.
So they were always fighting the set. Yeah. And with yours, it's like it's super deep. Yeah. You've got the ability to drop things in. I mean, it's a great setup. So when you walk into that theater, it's like, okay, this is awesome. Everybody has good sight lines. The person in the back has just as good as the person to the front as far as sight lines are concerned. So, I mean, to me, that's one of the biggest things. And then you get to actually see the productions that are put on there. Yeah. And like, oh, this is a community college. So talk bad about it now.
Yeah.
The only thing I wish they'd do is figure out a new name.
Yeah, me too. I was a student there. I was a graduate. In fact, it's kind of crazy that when I think about it, that since 1975, we've had 2 theater program coordinators. Ron Winiger was there from 75 to 2000. and I've been the program coordinator there since 2000.
Yeah.
And a person we Kristen.
Yeah.
But she hopefully will get the job
Yeah.
after me. I mean, she's been kind of waiting for me to retire for a while.
That seems like a smart move on her part.
Yeah, and she's great, and she's got 2 master's degrees in speech communication and theater, and she's been working there as we call them navigators, but she's probably going to take over after that. But I think one of the things I loved I came back, one, because I loved my experience, because I had a background. I really hadn't done any theater.
Yeah.
And I felt bad about it because I graduated from Belton High School. I went to 3 different high schools.
You graduated from Belton?
I did, yeah.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah, I went to Springfield, Illinois, Landfair High School for my freshman and half my sophomore year. I went to Warsaw High School, Warsaw, Missouri.
Striving to be drug-free?
Yeah. But that was culture shock right there, going from a huge school
to Warsaw. Yeah.
It was a cool experience, too.
Yeah.
And then we moved to Belton for half my junior and my senior year.
That's
and
interesting.
I've got a really good friend. I mean, I think of it as a really good friend. Great guy named Joel Short, who was there for 25 or 30 years. I mean, he was there for a long time. And I really wish I would have gotten involved in theater, because I got to know him later, and he's just an incredible human being. But, I didn't get involved in theater until Ron Winnegar offered me extra credit to go audition for a play, and it was called The Year Christmas Was Forgotten.
Yeah.
And it really was the show that should have been forgotten. But, I had a cheesy character, didn't know what the hell I was doing, but once you hear somebody laugh out in an audience, it was, and personally, Ron Winnegar is probably one of the people that helped me from a self-esteem standpoint more than many people, I can think of many people in my life that have just kind of, challenging me and getting me to do this. I think I've met people that are maybe better directors, but he was really, he has a degree in counseling.
Yeah.
And I still talk to him today, but really someone who influenced me incredibly. And slowly I changed from, a business major when I was there. I still have a minor in business, to speech communication,
right.
And then went on for my master's in theater, with the intention of maybe someday coming back to State Fair and teaching. But ever since I was even a student, I thought, man, we just need to change this name.
Yep. Yeah. And that would mean so much.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I really do think that, because I'd never, and this is probably not a positive thing. It probably just shows more about like my issues. But like, I always write that I graduated from SFCC.
Oh yeah, I try to put SFCC on stuff that I write anyway.
Yeah,
but it's one of the few colleges that I know of that's named after an event.
Right.
Think about any other. I can't think of any other school that's named after an event.
No.
And yes, we are across the road from the community college, or from the State Fair, but it was a naming contest.
Yeah.
And the first time nobody entered it.
Yep.
And I've actually seen the letters from the naming contest. And a lot of people, they're endeared to it. So I don't want to insult someone who loves the name.
I do.
Yeah.
I won't.
I still haven't retired yet.
Yeah.
I already signed my contract, so I'm good.
So, Eric, we saw you on this podcast, and you seem nice, but that guy's an asshole.
Yeah.
It's not like he went here or anything.
But, there were 2 other names, and I think one of them was, there's the Scott Joplin Festival. But someone said Scott Joplin College or Community College.
They're probably like, well, there's another city in Missouri called that.
Yeah. And then there was another one called Mid-Missouri College, which I kind of like that.
That one works.
Yeah, Mid-Mo is just kind of what.
Exactly.
Now, who knows? But I always thought that was kind of a cool name. But there's a lot of, significant people in Sedalia's history that we could name the college after, or, there's all kinds of things. The Alex Howell.
That's the first name they're going to come up with.
Absolutely.
Like, that one guy who played the dead guy? Yeah, that'll work.
That's good.
Didn't we see a picture of him with a 3-foot sausage? I don't think we can name it after him. What's like
that was the picture we're going to put right at the the entrance to
awesome.
State Fair. Yeah.
That's how you know you're here.
Yeah. Alex and his sausage.
Yep. It's gotta love it. Yeah, that was That was a weird script to read through. It was like between the sausage and everything else. It was like beats him with a sausage inside the sack. What kind of show? Like, what kind of show is this? It's like a really good one. Like, okay, I guess we're doing this.
Yeah, and Mike Beam was the one actually who suggested I read that.
Yeah.
You know, I still think some of my strengths, especially with the almost one more time mentality. I don't do as many anymore because and Spam a lot will be kind of like that. But I think I'd done well with farces.
Yeah.
Because I'm good with, really working out timing and that type of thing.
Yeah.
With kids.
Yeah, well, and it's one, like, you get the laughs, but you also pretty quickly, especially if you have like people that are in their first year there, if you have a really strong first year class, if you can do a farce, then if you do something like The Foreigner first, where the choreography is built in, everything's there, and it's at this point got to be way too easy for you to do The Foreigner. But if you do something like that, you teach kids the comedic timing, so that then when they come in the next year, then you can do a show that's as insane as Scapino is, and you know that you've got a crew that knows how to like hold for the laugh and then start their line.
Sure.
Because that was where I told Corey this on the podcast. It was like that was something that will always be ingrained in my mind about waiting for the laugh and kind of just knowing that timing. Because if it's if you just don't deliver it right, or if that crowd doesn't like it, then you need to continue going. But you need to have at least that bit of a pause to know if they're going to start laughing or not. And that was a lesson I learned, I think, my first show doing Guys and Dolls, because I was next to the girl, I think it was Audrey Burke, who played Adelaide. And there's a scene between Sky and Adelaide. And we're talking, and she delivers a line, which looking back should have been the most obvious, like, what are you doing even thinking?
Well, there's always a line where you go, I had no idea that was funny.
Yeah, so, and again, first show, so I didn't know.
Sure.
Especially as a 18-year-old, like, oh, it's funny? That's neat. I don't even know what it's talking about. Oh, that's why it's funny. But she says it. I say my complete line while the crowd is just hysterically loudly laughing. So nobody heard it. It was a fairly important line that set her line up. So all she did in the moment was just clip my line, set it, and then set her part and set us right back on the right track.
Yeah.
It's like, and now I know, that's when you just realize, like, okay, you've done this before.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's one of those things where you can never anticipate a laugh because every audience is different.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely true. I mean, I don't care how many times you see a show, you're going to see something a little different. And that's even with a good show that's well rehearsed, that's incredibly prepared.
Yeah.
Every audience is a little different. What they laughed hysterically at, we can even go through a pattern of performances. And I can tell you the basics of each night and how they will react to a particular show, depending on what kind of show it is.
Yep. Yeah. Well, Sunday matinees are always famous for the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the
wait for that
Wednesday,
line to hit.
Thursday night crowd might laugh at everything sexual because that's usually the college students or younger ones that come to that. And the Sunday matinee
they will not.
I don't want to totally stereotype that,
but that's what happens.
Yeah. They may think dropping an F-bomb is hilarious on Wednesday, but not so much on Sunday.
Right. Yeah. And that's one of the best things about live theater is that even if you anticipate it and know and it follows exactly the same pattern as you're used to, then you just know how to perform it a little differently.
Yeah.
Like, that's why it'd be awesome if every single show went for 2 weekends, because then it's like, okay, I didn't feel like I nailed a Sunday matinee, but now that I see their now that I know what that pattern looks like, maybe I can try it a little differently this time.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the one thing I love about theater is whether it's for a director or I love sound design. I think I've worked on some sound design. Most of my shows I've worked on my own and then worked on others for sound design. But, what I like about it is it's just a constantly growing. I'm by no means. I've had, 30 some odd years in theater.
Yep.
And I don't know. If you think that you know everything about theater, you are absolutely wrong.
Yep.
No matter what. I mean, I always try not to get too high after a show, and I usually don't, but I also have worked on not getting too low after a show, just because, people sometimes come up to you and say, that's the best show I've ever seen, but they said that the last show
Right.
that they came to.
Yeah.
And then there's others, like I always respected, we're kind of going back, seems like the Mike Beam show now, but I went back to Mike Beam and I still remember when he saw me in college and really gave me just some genuine compliments that you could tell were heartfelt.
Yeah.
And I've just always respected Mike.
Yeah.
Just because he wouldn't lie to you.
No.
And
Never.
he would, if he really thought you did something well, then he would genuinely compliment you. And that's somewhat of a rarity, I think, where, we find people that will criticize all the time. But I do think finding someone that just genuinely looks you in the eye and goes, you did that really, really well, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And I still remember that. And even when I didn't know who he was, because he came there to see Todd Schnocke, who works at Raymond Peculiar High School, and an incredible director. I think a great director too. And I went to school with him. He just would come up to me after the show was over.
Yeah.
And just talk to me for a little bit. And there were 2 shows that he saw that I was in with Todd. And he came up specifically and talked to me afterwards. So I don't know that I'm the most talented director. I know I'm not the most talented director or actor that's ever been on stage. But I've done a few things I think that are pretty good.
Yeah. Those are the moments you live for, too.
Yeah.
I mean, those little, and you never know when it's going to happen. But, I mean, one of mine was when I was in high school and I did Over the River Through the Woods, and there's that really intense speech, right before he goes into the house for the last time. And I'll never forget that because I did it one night, and I don't think it was opening night. I think it was the Friday night show. And I just got it right. Just one of those moments where it was like, holy shit, so all the work ahead of time actually turns out pretty well. I need to remember that.
Yeah, that's kind of like the shows that nothing goes right, or and that's what I always swore that I've had a couple of times, and it's been last time was the 90s where someone went blank and it was absolutely obvious to the audience.
Yeah.
And then I swore that would never happen. So that probably goes into the one more time thing that if this is not going to be a good show, it's not going to be because of lack of effort.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we're going to put a ton of effort into it. And I always hated the ones that said, it'll pick up when we get an audience.
No.
You can't rely on an audience to give you energy.
No, the audience isn't there for you. You're not there for the audience isn't there for you. You're there for the audience. So you better have it right before you get on stage.
Yeah, and you have to dictate to them in some ways how this, you can't, and that's what's always hard first time when you get people out of high school is that it's kind of hard for them to understand that because a lot of times you'll go see a show and it was maybe you look at opening night and you go, and they'll say, man, it's a lot better than tech rehearsal was. And I'm like,
oh God.
And it, most of the time, and some of those instances, not most of the time, I don't want to insult people because I think that people doing theater, whether it's incredible theater or just okay theater, it's still a cool experience for everybody involved.
Yeah.
I think that if you use that as an excuse, you just weren't prepared. For an audience.
Yeah. The absolute worst mistake I ever made was, the 2 monologue. It's not 2 monologues. It's one scene, but it kind of it feels like 2 in Over the River, and it's the first act where they're having the conversation, then he almost leaves, comes back into the room, and then leaves again.
Yeah.
I left the first one, and I'll never forget that because I'm
your
literally
were pissed after that.
Oh, I felt that's the worst I've ever felt, and I've had my moments, but. Like the one where I just delivered the line wrong, it's like that's a lesson. That's not a complete fuck up. This was a fuck up.
Yeah.
And I was mad at myself, and I went backstage because I left and I couldn't even stand to be around anybody. I was so mad, and because I'm closing the door, and it was as comical as it gets, as bad as it got, because I'm closing the door. Everyone else on stage knows that I'm messing up, and I don't. But when I'm closing the door, I see Shay Kaufman, and his eyes were 3 inches big. Like,
where the hell are
you
leave?
What are you doing? We can recover at this point. I was like, no, you can't.
I'm out of here.
Yeah, so I eventually I heard the first act end, and I went back, and
when Nick is yelling at the grandparents.
Yeah.
That moment. Yeah.
Yep. So it's upset, and I just went to straight yell and close the door. And so I went back and apologized. I mean, everybody's pissed off at me. Like, there's no hiding it. We're just like, I'm sorry. Like, that 100% on me. That was not you. Whatever happens, blame this guy. Luckily, I don't think it's as important to the audience as it is on stage, that particular interaction, because the second act kind of brings all the emotion into it. That was just like, here's why I'm mad and kind of spoiled.
That's the scene right before the end of the act where because you have to come back and have a panic attack, which sets up the whole second act.
Exactly.
So, yeah, it's not a good scene to forget there.
Nope. It wasn't.
You can't improv your way out of that sucker.
But I do think Mr. Beam came back and he figured it out. Like, he figured out, like, okay, so here's what we're going to do. And again, like, that's the best thing about him is, like, once the show is done, it's your show.
Yeah.
And you got to figure it out. It's okay, so here's what we're going to do. So I think we did the panic attack and then immediately moved into the next part. And that was what happened. So we opened up with a bang.
There you go.
But yeah, it was, oh God, that was the worst. I felt horrible. But again, recovered. And the next night, the show was as good as it ever was.
Yeah.
So I felt bad for the Friday night crowd, but Saturday night crowd got a great show.
Well, for the most part, the Friday night crowd may not have known that. But
Right.
Yeah, I still remember I just went blank for a second in the female odd couple. I played Jesus, and it wasn't even noticeable to the director, but to me it felt like an eternity.
Yep.
And I just picked it right back up. But I was like, I don't
like
want
me.
to be there. Yeah.
Yeah, me and the monologue Italian son.
Yeah.
Remember that night?
Yeah. Good times.
Yeah.
Good times. And then I also, I was in Dirty Work at the Crossroads, which was the first show I did at State Fair Community College in 1987. And there was just a moment where I heard my cue line. And I was several steps away. And we had actually, what is now our Black Box Theater, was a TV studio that, the set was built in, and we were down some steps and back in this little area that was Ron Winnegar's office at the time.
Yeah.
And I heard my line. I was like, oh, shit. And come running up. And you could hear me because it was all plywood back there, like, boom, 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 boom. And, I just say some stupid line, Miss Oakart, and then coming back in. But it was kind of like,
Yeah.
Yeah. So those it's not life and death. I mean, obviously.
Yeah.
But it's a moment where you kind of go, yeah, I let some people down, and I don't want to do that again.
No, you learn real fast how to not. And again, like, you're always going to mess up. There's always going to be those moments where somebody blanks or throws out a line that doesn't make any sense, and you've just got to kind of recover. And again, like, in the moment, it's terrifying.
Yeah.
Once it's over, it's like, oh, yeah, we recovered just fine. And everything worked out. I mean, the ultimate one was the one during the children's show for me, and it was one where, like, I finally came out on the good side of it. But it was just one of those things, like, again, that's why my opinion is, like, you have to be there for more scenes than just yours.
Yeah.
I mean, you
got to be there for everybody. And it's also the warning I always have, because I tell one of these stories, usually when we're getting to a point where, we're off book and we're working, and sometimes it's so easy to go on autopilot, but it's that, the old phrase, you always have to be in the moment. You have to be there. You can't be, I've done this 1,000 times, I'm just going to do it again. One, it doesn't make for a truthful performance.
Right.
But two, sometimes you can go there and go, did I say that line?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it becomes actor thoughts, not character thoughts.
Right.
But yeah, I remember I do tell that story about the children's show where it was my mistake to begin with, where I told the kids that, when it was Stinky Cheese Man and other fairly stupid fairy tales, and it was a musical version, but I still tell that story every once in a while, where a guy that was playing.
It was his first lead.
Yeah.
I mean,
he was the fox, kind of the villain of the show. So we, had people boo him. And the cool thing about children's theater is you want them to participate. They will participate.
Yeah.
And they were booing him, and he couldn't start his next line.
Yeah.
And he just stepped off stage. He kind of freaked out and stepped off stage.
Yep.
And then old Farmer Alex comes running back in. I remember, hey, kids, the next story we have, I remember what you said.
Yeah, I remember.
Like,
I almost remember
and it was like
verbatim.
instantaneous, yeah.
Yeah, I almost, because my brain just went, I literally at one point, I think there were two actresses that were by me. One was Catherine Badenko.
Yeah.
Who was playing a bird or something like that in the show.
Yeah, I can't remember her character's name, but yeah.
Yeah, but I remember my brain just, again, this is one of those things, like this is why you pay attention to the whole thing, because my brain went, she can't come on stage. Like, no, she was on the other side, because I saw her in the end. So it was a scene where the fox has to say a line to her, interact with her, she has to get off stage, and then he has to bring Jeff's character on. And I remember that because I paid attention to it all the time, because I end up going in on the next scene. And so I was just hanging out on the side, not talking. I wasn't talking. I was whispering very quietly. But I heard the booing, and it had been kind of building up. And again, it's one of those moments where if, and I think you probably told him this the next show when we were all standing there, it was like, if they don't let you just start, because they're going to want to hear your line.
Yeah. And, of course, that was the time, too, that we didn't have you guys mic'd.
Yeah.
Yeah, and children's theater in front of, 400 kids.
Loud.
And a musical, for that matter. I mean, it wasn't necessarily the greatest for voices.
No.
At that time. But, yeah, it was tough. And, if you train them at the beginning, it sounds bad, train them, but if you have them, like, even just, putting your finger up next to your mouth and going, shh, that'll quiet them down pretty quick.
Yeah.
Because they're usually pretty good at listening. I love children's theater because it's really, if they're with you, they are with you.
Yeah.
And, you get immediate reactions. And I think that, it's another tangent, but I think that children's theater is one of those things that I don't understand why more theaters don't take it more seriously. Because I'm like, if you really want to continue the livelihood of theater, especially in the Midwest where we're not as exposed to theaters we might be in other areas of the country, you want to hook them when they're kids.
Yeah, 100%.
This could be a cool thing to do, and I've always felt strongly about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and I also want to clarify here the disclaimer that just because we've had some of these experiences, State Fair Community College still has a pretty good theater.
Oh, hell yeah!
Just so you know.
Well, these are moments like, with what happened in the Stinky Cheese Man. I mean, that was we expanded, or you guys, I shouldn't say we. You expanded the shows to last not only through that initial week and the weekend, but I think we did like another Monday, Tuesday, or Tuesday, Wednesday show. So,
and that was children's theater at State Fair is 3 shows a day.
For at that point, 10 days.
Yeah. So it's
this is one moment.
Yeah. Just in a regular run. I mean, now we've added some people on stage, and because Stinky Cheese Man was the first one that really kind of took off. We had successful children's theater, but we have 5,000 come to that show. Yeah. And we only seat 239, so you can imagine how many performances we have to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's intense. But yeah, that was. I mean, and again, like I think the biggest compliment I got was that nobody could tell.
Yeah.
And that was just one of those positive things.
It was instantaneous because, I was sitting out there.
My brain went, uh-oh. And then all of a sudden I realized that the light was in my face, and I was like, I just stepped out here. That was a mistake. But yeah, he got mad, and he just said, okay, you don't want to – it was something to the effect of, okay, you don't want to hear what I have to say, fine. And he just left.
Yeah.
And then that's when my brain – I saw him continue to walk, not like he was making a joke. And so I just found myself out on stage, and I basically was just like, I said enough to get by, but I knew I had to do 2 things, and I tell everybody this because it was just, it's one of those moments that you'll carry with you forever, because it was like, this is when I finally got to like save the day and not fuck the show up.
Yeah.
But I came out, and I knew where I had to be, so I went over there, said what I remembered of his line. Catherine swung like a rake at me. I did what he was supposed to do, got her off stage, got Jeff on, did the fake kiss with him, which freaks him out, and then I just like walked off proudly. And that was all I had to do. But if I hadn't been paying attention, then I wouldn't have been able to do it. And so it's like, but I remember I walked off stage, and Catherine was sitting there. She's like, that was awesome. Like, yeah, okay, cool. I'm not going to sleep for 5 days, but that's fine.
Yeah. Well, and it's like those now we can laugh about. I mean, at the moment we were all freaking out.
Of course, yeah.
I still think about. I just saw a guy who I had it. That's the other cool thing about teaching theater is that I still have people that I may not see them for 10 years, but we can start talking, and it's been like it hasn't been a day. Yeah. But Matt Jones, who's in New York now. He's been in New York now for several years, but he's got he's married and has a boy, and he works at Hudson. I think it's Hudson Scenery, but they did like sets for. I just saw All My Sons on Broadway with Annette Bening, and he did a lot of the construction for that set through his scene shop.
Nice.
That he works on. So he's been doing that for maybe 20 years now. I don't. But but anyway, he was in a show that I was in. It was Brighton Beach Memoirs, and there's a very intense scene where Stanley, the son, the dad, has some health issues and can't work, and this is the 1930s. So, but Stanley decides that he's the oldest son and tries to make more money by gambling, but ends up gambling his salary away. And they've got other people staying with them at the house. Their relatives are there as well. And, in the middle of depression. So this was not necessarily a moment, but there was just, and if Crowder College is a little bit of a different stage.
I remember that.
Yeah, it's just the stage and the seats are on the same level.
Yep.
And so because it was a 2-story set and a fairly large set, we pretty much came out right to the edge of it. Our playing space came right out to there. So you were a good 3 feet away from the front row. And there was 2 people sitting right by them. They were at the park bench, was the most extreme downstage or closest to the audience where they could be. And they were sitting on this bench that was outside the front door. And they were having this heart-to-heart conversation. And a woman, in fact, Matt and I just talked about this story the last time we met. But he was the dad, and this woman was the guy was playing with his hearing aid, and he was playing with it, and he was talking. And sometimes when you're talking and you have a hearing aid, you talk louder than you think you are.
Yep.
So he was talking louder, and then that didn't necessarily bother him. But when the woman, I assume his wife, grabbed her purse and did a full-on swing and smacked him and said, "Would you just shut the hell up?" There was a moment there where it was just one of those deer in the headlights moments where he just kind of snapped out front, eyes wide open, then snapped right back into the scene. And he was like, "Eric, I thought that you were full of shit, that sometimes things could happen, but now I know it's legit." And that's the beauty of live theater is that
it's there. That's it.
The art doesn't last, man. It's there. It's there for that moment, and it's gone the next.
Yeah.
And you can video it or whatever you want to, but it's not the same as live theater.
No. Yeah, Guys and Dolls, they put a clip-on tie on me. And the scene where we're in the dancing together and she's dragging me across, the tie popped out.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah, first show.
Yeah. Good point.
I think that was actually the Sunday matinee that was filmed. That was the last one, but it was just one of those, I'm glad we got that on film because thank God it was that show where that embarrassing moment happens.
Yeah.
But hey, why not? But yeah, the hearing aid thing was always something that I heard a lot on Sunday matinees, no matter where it was, no matter where I've been doing a show. But the somebody not hearing a line and then the person next to them repeating the entire scene is the one that I'll.
Yeah.
Should we just start redoing it up here?
You didn't get that? Okay, let's move on back.
Hold
it's
on.
one of my favorite scenes in. I think it's what is it? It's a Kevin Kline movie. But it's not A Fish Called Wanda, but it's one where he's doing Death of a Salesman in Miami. And there's these, it's very stereotypical of senior citizens, which scares me because this November I'm eligible for coffee discounts.
Hey.
I'm taking them.
Oh, hell yeah.
But I still have a little shame about that. But, there's these very stereotypical senior audience that's watching, in Miami or some beach town, in Florida. And it is, they're doing Death of a Salesman, right in the middle of Death of a Salesman. somebody spills their drink and they're all talking to each other, kind of this big hubbub trying to get a server over there. And he's giving a monologue as Willie Loman, then walks over and cleans up the table and says, let me take care of that for you. And then helps them out and then just goes back up on stage.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Got to do what you got to do.
Got to do what you got to do.
Yeah.
So
Well, it's interesting to see how different actors handle moments like that because, like, I remember a story about Hugh Jackman being, I can't remember what the show was, but he plays a New York detective, and it was on Broadway, and he got just annihilated in the press for like 3 minutes before people who actually know what live theater is like showed up and like said you should stop talking.
yeah.
But somebody in the audience was just interrupting this kind of real intense exchange, and he's supposed to be just pissed off pretty much the whole time.
Yeah.
And he looked at them and said something to the effect of "shut the hell up," and then just went right back to his scene. And I remember, like, there was several news articles from, like, the Kansas City Star and, you know, anything that you'd see online. And it was all just like, can you believe he's this bad of a person? Like, fuck yeah. Have you ever been in that situation?
Yeah.
Of course you can.
See everybody playing with their cell phone or doing
Yeah.
whatever they, it's kind of like,
Yeah.
you've just lit up your face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. At this point, all I can see is black. I can't see anything below the lights.
Yeah.
Except for you right there playing with your cell phone.
Yeah.
That's the one person I can now see. Okay.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. But yeah.
I got embarrassed by Todd, by Mr. Schnocky, when we went to the International Thespian Festival in Nebraska one year, because there was a show, and I really wish I could remember what it's called. It'll come to me in a minute, and then I'll scream it out like in the middle of your sentence, I'm sure. But there's kind of a pretty, I mean, for high school students, like a pretty intense, like kind of sexual moment between two characters, and the audience had been kind of woo-wooing the whole time. And so this is an hour and a half into it and well through the second act. I mean, we're kind of hitting the last couple of scenes. And so they're woo-woo and clapping and everything. I'm on the end as far away from my group as possible. The stage is that way. They're way up here, so I can't see what they're doing. And so I did that. I did the same thing everybody else was doing. And I can't remember if he took a piece of paper, like the program, and hit my shoulder, or if he like cupped my shoulder with his hand and just like did that. And I looked behind me and he was like, "You will not." Like, okay.
I'm cool.
I'm cool. I got it. Jesus, I didn't realize this. Our people take this really seriously. But yeah,
and Ray Peck's got a great.
Oh,
I
yeah.
can't speak more highly of it. They've got a great theater program, and from Mike Beam, who was there for many, many years, to Todd, who was a student of his and has just gone on to do some really cool things there. But they've got they don't mess around.
No,
they've got a good theater program.
No, it was fun being there because I was a late bloomer in that. My Guys and Dolls was the last part of my junior year, and then it was just my senior year that I was there acting, and it was intense because, I mean, it was Mr. Beam's last year, so Schnocky was taking over. And there was one show that I didn't do, and I can't remember why, but I got to work with him a lot when we did our one act where we performed at State. And we worked Little Shop of Horrors, but I was a minor character. I was one of the dentist's minor characters.
Yeah.
And so I never really gotten to work with him one-on-one, just Mr. Beam, because I worked with him on pretty much every show. And when I finally got to actually work with Todd, I was like, oh, you really know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Like, Mr. Beam is an amazing, amazing director. Todd is an amazing, amazing director. And it was like, in that moment, though, it was like, so this is why we're successful.
Yeah.
Because we have two great directors with two completely different personalities.
Oh,
but
yeah.
two great directors.
Yeah, they're almost opposites in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But there's so many different ways that, you can direct a show. And
Well, yeah.
I always like to say, if you can notice a director's work, then you haven't done your job.
Yep.
I think that it needs to look like it's all about the performers on stage and the people that are making it happen.
Yeah.
It's like a good stage manager. Most people don't notice, but they're freaking vital.
Try to not have a good one.
Yeah. I've had a few.
Oh,
But we were talking about moments that I'm proud of, and I think, gosh, I can think just about like this last semester.
Yeah.
We did we have what's called the Student Theater Showcase, which are student directed shows. And this year we had a one act that was directed by a student, and then we had our people that are graduating, because we now have an Associate of Fine Arts instead of just an Associate of Arts.
Oh, nice.
So we offer a lot more classes than what we did when you were there.
Nice.
And so we had, and it's brand new, so we had our first group of AFA graduates. And they did some scenes and monologues that they do as part of their final for a 1-hour class. That's the final thing that they do for their AFA.
Yeah.
But we had some scenes intermingled in there from the acting class. And there was one young woman, her name's May, incredible young lady, but came in and she was extremely shy. Really, you couldn't hear her.
Yeah.
You could be 10 feet away and you couldn't hear what she was saying.
Yeah.
And then this last semester, she was in a student-directed show where she was actually a guard at a concentration camp, a female concentration camp.
Oh.
And she was loud and boisterous. Wow. And then I helped her out a little bit with the acting class, and she did a show by Rich Orloff. It's a 10-minute play called The Right Sensation. Mm-hmm. And he based it on a friend of his who had a partial mastectomy and was missing her right breast.
Okay.
And had an implant put in, and she didn't have much feeling in it. So he did this 10-minute play, and it's kind of cool because it's the first time this woman is going out on a date, and she really likes this guy, and they've been, kissing, and he puts his hand on her chest and stops. And there's a lot of comedic things that happen in it, but it's kind of one that you got to be pretty vulnerable doing. And it was just not something that May was comfortable with. And it was hard, and they really wanted to do it. So I tried to help them as much as possible. And it just ended up that they really did a fine job. I mean, they did a great job. Neither one of the actors were totally comfortable with it, but through the process, they got much more comfortable with it.
Yeah.
They both felt a little awkward about it.
Right.
So I just thought it was really just kind of a cool moment. It may not be the greatest acting job ever done, but it's
But you think
two
about where
guys
they
that
came
really,
from.
where they came from and how much they grew.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was just kind of a cool moment.
Yeah.
There's those. There's, let's see. Lauren Dowell, who I've talked about earlier, who came into auditions in a wheelchair because of an injury, and then just is, incredible young woman. We've had several good students over the years. We did She Kills Monsters, and I thought it was an incredible learning experience for the woman who played. It was kind of her first. I never like to use the term lead.
Yeah.
But Agnes was the character, and she played the lead in She Kills Monsters. And really, it was she's kind of more of a character actor before that. But there were a lot of funny lines in there, but she usually wasn't one of them at all times. Now, sometimes she was, but she really just did a beautiful job of connecting to it. And she has a monologue where she talks about not knowing her sister and not being able to learn or grow anything past that. And she related it back to her grandfather that had passed away a few months before. And she really just had an incredible growth experience, and it was kind of cathartic for her to do that. But I could probably tell you 1,000 different stories from people that I really think have done a nice job. Over the River and Through the Woods, I was really proud of when we did that. There's all kinds of cool people that were in that group, and we did do an Italian accent, and I drove them crazy because we did exercises because I thought that was important in that particular show. It's really important there.
Right.
But had a great cast, and they worked really, really well together. So there's so many moments. I've got moments of frustrations with every show, but there's so many moments of, students doing really incredible work and busting their ass. Yeah.
And everybody's there for the most part 3 hours a night, 5 days a week plus.
Yeah.
And then you get to dress rehearsals.
Yeah.
And then you're there
it's,
forever.
But
I mean, all those are incredible things to me, because you think about, like, if you told somebody, you have to be here, especially when you get to dress, and if it's a big show, most of the time you're going 7 days a week, leading 2 weeks up to the show. You're doing that plus the show itself.
Yeah.
And so you have people that are working 5 to a full-time job, it seems like sometimes, especially when you think about like you going home and then working. So if you're doing that 7 days a week, I mean, that's intense, especially for college students, especially for somebody who's teaching college classes. I mean, it's a collaborative effort without question.
Yeah.
When you think about overall and I know that the initial answer has to be everybody's different, therefore what I have to do is different, but you're also directing all kinds of different people at the same time, and there's only so many hours in the day. When you're finding somebody that is growing in their role, what are you like? What's your, I don't want to say plan of action, because I'm sure at this point it's kind of ingrained in just you and what you do. But if you're seeing somebody like, the actress that wasn't comfortable with something but was kind of progressing, or somebody that was working in the right direction, how do you kind of keep seeding that when you're going through rehearsals? Because it's got to be difficult to not just say, let's run this scene and then I'm going to change this, I'm going to change this, because like you said, you want to make sure it doesn't look like the director directed it.
Yeah.
It was just all what's happening at that moment. But a lot of times, I mean, I've worked with them, you've worked with thousands, I'm sure at this point, just the people who you give them a little bit of guidance and a little bit of guidance, and over time that, that person becomes polished, or at least something very close to it with the amount of time that you have.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I try to. Now, part of the problem is, especially when you're talking about some of the college levels, is sometimes you're working on the squeaky wheel.
Yep.
And you I try not to do this, but you have a tendency to not talk to the ones as much that are really doing well. I try to just ask questions.
Yeah.
Like, what are you thinking here? What's happening? I try to give actors as much freedom as possible. I do have prescribed blocking. I mean, there's organic blocking and other, but I do prescribe the blocking just because I feel like 18, 19-year-olds don't know what it looks like on stage, and organic blocking is really when people have had several years of if you want to do it well. And a lot of times what happens, not always, sometimes at college and especially in high schools, they say they're doing organic blocking because that sounds cool. But really what they're doing is they're being lazy, because really organic blocking, you need to know it as well as if you mapped out every single movement. Yeah. You just need to be able to help guide them do that. And some actors can figure that out. But but even with that, I still think that they need some freedom, and they also need to hear periodically that was fucking awesome. Yeah. And it's amazing to me, just one compliment. It's so hard to get lost in the minutia to remember what these I'm going to say kids, but what these kids are, sacrificing. Yeah. To do what they're doing, and that they love it. And that, it's frustrating, and I like to say I love theater, but I hate drama, but there's always some drama there somewhere. Yeah. But, over the years, I've been really blessed to have some really cool people that I've worked with. There's a few that I go, but even some of the few that I wanted to swear at or yell at or whatever, even a few of those have, like we talked about from Scipino, have called me back. Actually, a kid I, gave him $100 and some odd so that he had several bad checks and had to pay for it. And he was actually to the point where they were going to
come get
lock him up, come get him. And so I gave him whatever it was, $100, $200 at the time. And this is when I was first started teaching. So I really didn't have, $200 to give, and, I think it was just Audrey then, but still our first baby. And, at that time, one salary, and teacher salaries aren't great. Yep. And then I never expected to see that back. That was the only show he did. But 5 years later, he came back and paid me back. Wow. And I never expected to see that. Yeah. And, in Little Shop, there's another guy who, you know who I'm talking about. Yep. Who's come back and talked to me and said, I'm really sorry that I really tried to help him, and it worked out to be incredibly talented. Yeah. I mean, incredibly talented.
Well, he's in front of the camera now.
Yeah.
I mean,
he is.
Different way, but in front of a camera, and he should be.
And, I mean, he's incredibly talented, but came back, and I think he's had a lot of growth since then. And hopefully I was a little part of that. But, I just think that there's so many people that are doing so many cool things that I think is unfortunate. You were talking about this in your last podcast, but how it's just gotten to where it's so negative most of the time, and it's always negative about the younger generation.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, oh, they don't do this, they don't do that, whatever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I didn't get an award for participating or whatever the hell they're talking about. Yeah. I'm like, you know what? You also didn't have the challenges of so much technology pulling you in 5,000 different directions.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in every study that you see, it's like the numbers just don't work out either.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't want to sound like it's an excuse, but when I look at things, it's like the numbers are the things that always tell me what's what.
Yeah.
It's like, and if everything's more expensive but salaries will remain the same, or at least close to the same, then guess what? It's more difficult.
Yeah.
And it might not seem like it, but it is. And there are a lot of reasons for that, and we can argue about whose fault that is until we're all blue in the face. And it's not ever one person. It's not ever one party. It's not ever one anything. But it's not the same. So rather than saying, who are we going to assign blame to now, let's figure out how to make that better. But my mom, and I really wish I remember who the line was or who said the line, but it was so far back it doesn't really matter, but the story does. And it's, do you think the line, with the next generation will come the downfall of mankind, is true? And it's like, of course not. But most people will answer, well, yeah. I mean, yeah, there's next generation. They just don't understand anything. It's like, yeah, that was spoken by blah, 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 the king, one of the kings of the city-state of this place in 1202. Like, it's not going to happen. Just because you think it will, it's not going to.
Well, I remember, my grandpa talking to me, and he had, lived through the Depression.
Yeah.
And he would tell me that, yeah, I hope that we never have anything like that because you'd never be able to survive. And in some respects, it's probably true because we're not nearly the agrarian society
Right.
we were in the 20s and 30s, and we're not as self-sufficient as we might have been back then. But yeah, they were talking about I worked this many hours or whatever, and I think to some extent that's true. It just changes. There's different challenges.
Yeah.
So I'm certainly not one to give answers to these questions because hell, I don't know.
Right.
When we talk about politics, I think that the best thing that could happen for us, and this is just my opinion, is that we had a third strong party.
Yeah.
To where we're forced to negotiate no matter what.
Yeah.
Because I don't care if it's Democrats or Republicans, it seems like whenever one of them has control, they fuck it up.
Yeah. Well, and when they have too much, that's always been, to me, that's the most terrifying thing. I mean, I can't remember which podcast it was. I think it was the one with maybe my the other Corey Gallagher. But I was telling him, it's like, I've never, not to this day, I've never voted for a Republican for Missouri for governor. It's not because I don't normally identify with right now. I'm really confused about anything.
Well, nobody
political.
knows who the hell what party they're in because they've all,
It's But so anyway, but I haven't on principle because it's always freaked me out that I look at our House and Senate and they are just everything proof Republican. And it's like, you need that other strong voice that you might not agree with, but to fight. I mean, even if you think that you have everything lined out and perfect, you don't need everybody agreeing with each other because the moment that politicians get into an echo chamber, nothing's going to turn out well.
Yeah. Well, and even now we've gotten to a point, although, it's not like nasty politics was just created in the last 10 years or whatever.
Yeah.
It's been around for a long time.
Yeah.
But we've gotten to a point where compromise has become a really bad word.
Right.
And I'm from a communication background, and compromise is the only word.
Yeah.
I mean, how the hell are you going to survive a marriage if you don't compromise? You got two people. Guess what? You have two people with two differing opinions. Yeah, you may be alike in some respects, but you're different in some respects too.
Yeah. And
you're going to have different, ideas about raising your children or doing whatever.
Right.
And there's got to be some compromise there somewhere. And it makes me sad that now we're just in, insult politics.
Right.
And, it's just, I lean more Democrat.
Yeah.
But I've been just as disappointed with the Democratic Party as I have been. I just want somebody to be fucking consistent.
Yeah. Just one person.
Yeah, that's why, libertarians, it's kind of like the Green Party. They're not really going to win anything, so
Right.
they can be just upfront and say the shit that they think is true.
Right.
I might disagree with them,
Right.
but at least they're honest about it.
Right. Well, it's like that's one of the, there's a clip from one of the Daily Show episodes when Jon Stewart was talking about when Ron Paul was like coming in second place everywhere, and
Yeah.
no news network, conservative, liberal, middle of the road, didn't matter. Nobody was talking about it. They'd be like, "Well, Michelle Bachmann won Iowa, and then Romney and Santorum lost to her," and it's like, well, Ron Paul came in second. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
And it's like you can disagree with his politics, and I mean, even Jon Stewart said this. He's like, you can disagree with his politics all day long, but guess what? He hasn't changed.
Yeah.
And he still has the line like, I go back, why did you vote no on this? He doesn't say like, well, I voted no because I felt, it's like, I looked at the Constitution and it said we can't do that, and so I didn't vote for it.
Yeah.
It's like, I might agree with it, but a dictator agrees with everything they see.
Sure.
So, it's like, what? Can he come back? Because his son doesn't appear to be sticking in his lane either.
Not so much. Not so much.
But yeah, it's,
Like
it's,
him or hate him, Bernie Sanders has been consistent.
yeah, he's the same. I mean, he's pretty much the exact opposite of Ron Paul.
Yeah, sure.
And I told everybody, it's like, I was going to vote for Bernie, not because I like him. I disagree with almost everything that he has to say, but we had a Republican-controlled Congress, and I was like, nothing will get done for 4 years. Awesome. Because right now, that seems like the best option.
Yep.
Let's just push pause and not suck for like 4 years, and just everybody look at each other and figure out what's going to happen, and then we'll elect people that actually know what the hell they're doing.
Yeah.
Or at least pretend to.
I don't think that's ever.
Yeah, I get depressed when I read, like, and I probably talked too much on the podcast about it, but last year I found Audible, and I read 8 or 9 just novels, and I never ever do that, but I can listen to things way better than I can read. Not even like just retaining it. I can hold it. And I read the 3-part biography on Theodore Roosevelt. I read Alexander Hamilton by Chernow, and a couple of other ones. And I'm just reading these books and going, oh, fuck. We had these guys.
Yeah.
We had them, and we were just like, we're good.
Politics chews people up and spits them out.
Oh, yeah.
And I think what you're talking about with Ron Paul is the same thing that's really happening with, on the Democratic side, Elizabeth Warren or Kamala Harris, is that, I never pronounce his name, but Mayor Pete gets all this attention.
Yeah.
But he's not as high as Elizabeth Warren are, and I think he seems like a fine individual. I don't know much about him.
Yeah.
But, Elizabeth Warren's really kind of climbing, but she doesn't get nearly the press.
No.
That
because she doesn't
Joe
say
Biden
anything crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. But, and I don't know that I don't know that I'm a big expert on Mayor Pete. I think there's a lot of great things that some ideas that he has. But, the problem is you don't win by being specific.
No. Yeah, and if you try, then you go either somebody can pick out one piece and it feel like they win.
Yeah.
Like, well, you didn't say this correctly, so obviously you have no idea what we're talking about. Or the common man doesn't get what you're saying. You can be, I mean, like the guy who I can't remember. I think his last name's Yang. He's the guy that continues to talk about universal basic income.
Yeah.
Now, I completely disagree with it, but he found a point. He found one consistent point that either people like or hate. But it's going to take one person 2 seconds to dismantle it with him standing there, and it'll be done. Elizabeth Warren, I mean, I just don't agree with her politically. I have nothing against the woman, but I just disagree with her politically. She's smart. She seems to know what she's doing. Like, she apparently gets it. It's like Bernie Sanders. Disagree with him completely. He's been saying the same shit for decades. You just have only heard of him recently because of, the whole fiasco from the last election.
Yeah.
It's like, when you actually watch his speeches, if you have something that they clip out a 10-second burst, it's like, well, yeah, that sounds terrible. But if you listen to the whole speech, he never sounds crazy. That's just an idea.
Yeah.
And again, like, that's why I said I'd vote for him, because I just know nothing would get done. But he also has been consistent. So
Hell, I voted for Ross Perot years ago just because I
Yeah.
wanted a third party. I didn't think Ross Perot was going to win.
him and his charts.
Yeah, him and his charts. But I was just voting because I thought, man, we need to have you know, the two-party system. Don't get me wrong. I love the United States, and I think we've got a lot of great things going for us. But the two-party system has kind of run into a rut.
Yeah.
A big-time rut.
And
I think we need somebody in between, or at least someone that, or some party to emerge that if we had three parties in there, it's not an even number. You have to compromise.
Yeah.
Because I don't care if you're a libertarian, a Democrat, a Republican, a Green Party, you know, I can't
Constitution Party, blah, blah,
whatever.
all those.
You've got some good ideas and you got some bad ideas. You know what I mean? We could. I don't think we could ever transition to a total libertarian.
No,
because you know that's probably, to me, that's pure Republicans is libertarian.
Yeah,
you just, you know, don't mess with people.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Let them kind of live their lives.
Yeah.
But the way our system is now, I don't think it would work. I'd love to see someone that was a libertarian in there, so it would kind of be a go-between.
Yeah,
because Republicans aren't Republicans anymore, and Democrats aren't Democrats.
No.
Anymore.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I always voted Republican, and now I just look around. I'm like, we have $1.5 trillion deficit right now, and that's never been the MO that I've always used to say I'm a Republican.
Yeah.
Ever. Like that's the exact opposite.
Democrats are called tax and spend, and Republicans now are, you know, don't tax and spend.
And spend, yeah.
And spend more.
Yeah. Well, and that's what, you know, when the Trump tax cuts came out, you know, I've got a lot of friends who are, you know, obviously on both sides. My theater and education friends tend to be more progressive, and my, you know, the friends that I grew up with, and, you know, the people that are, you know, I'll say just quote unquote business owners of some sort, they tend to be more conservative. It's like, I understand the idea that when you look at things, and especially when my friends on the conservative side would be like, yeah, tax cuts. Like, yeah, here's the thing. I am 100% in favor of tax cuts because I do think that we're taxed way too much. That being said,
we're not paying for the shit that we got.
Exactly. It's like, well, it's going to stir up. No, it's not. Like, I can show you 15 diagrams and charts that say that what is about to happen might show economic benefit, but not to the degree that it's trying to be measured to show. So that's one, that's just a non-starter for me. And two, like at that point, before the tax cuts, we had a $700 billion deficit. Now it's at 1.5. Guess why? This is the same thing that happened with Bush. He gave back the surplus that we needed to continue to pay the deficit down. Those are, like, again, for me, it always goes back to the numbers. It's always about the numbers. And if the numbers don't work, then your system doesn't work.
Yeah.
And the fact that...
Well, I thought the ballsiest thing a politician in my lifetime, there's probably other examples, but I go back to George H.W. Bush, who I liked.
Yeah.
You know, he said, read my lips, no new taxes.
Yep.
And then he had to raise taxes because he got in there and found out that we can't pay for all the shit that people want unless we raise taxes.
Yeah. And Reagan spent like crazy.
Yeah.
So it had to happen.
Yeah. You know, and it's, I mean, I don't like the big guy now.
Yeah, Trump.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I don't know. Do I want to name him? You know, but I just think part of it is just because I'm not sure what the fuck he's doing.
Yeah.
Sometimes, and it's not Republican, so it's kind of like, you know, making a deal with the devil. You know, you get some of the things you want, but what are you paying? I mean, you know, that was to me always the party of. Whether it's America first or whatever, but definitely not Russians involved in our politics.
Yeah, that's,
you know, I thought us Democrats were the commies. I didn't, of course, I'm not communist, but anyway, you know what I mean.
Traditionally,
yeah.
I mean, and that's just like my perspective, like that worries me, and maybe I'm dumb for not paying attention as much to that, but since this has gone on, it was kind of like to me, and again, it's nowhere near this initial circumstance, which is when everybody was saying like Obama wasn't born here. There's no birth certificate, all that kind of stuff. That stupid argument. When they were still making that argument so long in, I was starting to get really frustrated because I was like, look, do you really want people that are not Americans to look at America and go, those people were so stupid that they didn't research if he was born here or not?
Yeah.
One of our biggest rules to become president, you really want that to happen? Shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
Let's just move
Yeah.
on. It's fine.
But I think
don't-
politics has gotten to a point where it's the old
petty.
adage: if you repeat a lie often enough, it becomes the truth.
Exactly. And yeah, with Trump and the collusion thing, like I honestly have just been kind of like, I don't know what's happening there enough to really comment on it. I mean, I've probably researched it, I assume, more than the average person, but I just have looked at it and just been like, I have no idea, and I don't think it really seems like a non-starter of a political issue, because I don't think anybody's ever gonna, like, they're never gonna say like, we did it.
Yeah.
You're right. But to me, with Trump, it's just been like, dude, I think you have to call every politician out when they do something great, good, bad, or anything, or horrible. And so like with him, it's like if you find out that that's the case, you have to call him out. You can't be a fan of the guy 100% of the time.
Sure.
But Republicans are way better at staying on message. Like at this point, like they all get together.
I'll give you that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
I mean, they've got they'll say one thing and they'll repeat it, even if it's not really true.
Yeah.
They'll say it over and over again.
Yeah.
Now, I think that I listen to this, is probably any conservatives you have listening will go, oh, I'm not going to listen to this guy. Hell, I'm a theater guy, so what the hell? Nobody's going to listen to me anyway. But I look at Bill Mayer's kind of become controversial.
Bill Maher?
Bill Maher. Sorry.
Yeah, I watch him all the time.
Yeah.
Love him to death.
I really think he's hilarious, but he criticizes the Democrats
Every bit
almost as much as he does the Republicans. And, you have to be able to look at, and part of it, one of the things his criticisms is that Democrats are wimps.
Yeah.
In some respects.
Yeah.
We're so worried about offending someone or doing something that could be potentially offensive.
Yep.
And, I think there's really strong issues that need to be addressed. I mean, my daughter, I'm incredibly proud of her. She works for Moxa, and she is a social worker and a child advocate. We are the 10th most violent country against women in the world.
Yeah.
We're talking about countries that, where rape and pillage is part of what's built into their society. Countries that are in civil wars or different wars where there's tons of violence against women. We're number 10.
Yeah.
How the hell are we a developed country and are the 10th most violent country when it comes to women? That's just that to me is just bullshit. I don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat or a libertarian. That's just wrong.
It's horrible. Yeah.
And God love my daughter, but she's working with that every single day.
Yeah. That's got to be tough.
There's a lot of success stories, and there are a lot of heartbreakers. And
yeah.
I don't know where the balance is.
Yeah.
But something screwed up here.
Yeah.
Where we kind of worry about some things, and I don't say that border security isn't important or those types of things, but sometimes we worry about that and then don't deal with some even larger problems.
Yeah. Well, I think
we just say it doesn't exist.
Exactly. I mean, when you really look at what we're doing, and again, this is one of those, like, it's such a balancing act, and I don't have any idea how a good politician would ever work this out, because I think this is such a long-term thing that you would have to find some real common ground to make this happen. But I mean, my biggest gripe throughout, when I ran and before, and kind of the reason that I ran, was I'm looking at, our education system, whether, you think that there's some positives, negatives, whatever it is. One of my biggest gripes is not that, we don't have things set in place that are a positive thing. One of my biggest gripes is that some of the most basic things that people should know are never taught, because I feel like for so many years, decades at this point, we've been teaching for tests. And that's in, the education that we know people have to get, K through 12. And, I look back at some of the classes that I took, and I have nothing against English teachers. I don't have anything against, high-level math teachers or biology teachers, anything like that. Obviously, I know too many teachers to ever have one negative word to say about them. There's a reason that I am where I am today, and that's because of the people that were teaching me. Also good parents, but the teachers were there to kind of get that through my thick skull. But I really don't feel, and this is from a young age, I don't feel like we teach the most basic things that you should know. And there are two bad parts to that. One, I honestly don't think it is the education system's job to teach some of that stuff. Like, there are some things where it's like, no, this should be the parents. But then there are other things, and again, this is like the big government side that people in the Libertarian Party would say I'm not libertarian enough. It's like, but there are also times where you kind of have to look around at your society and go, what we're doing now is not fucking working. Yeah. And if we have to kind of reimagine our education system to make sure that it does, that's probably the right way to go. Yeah. Because what's happened, and I think about this, and this is kind of going on topic but a bit off topic, but some of those most basic things too, in my opinion, are you have to like really take a look at sex education in this country as well. Because I don't think enough people really...
Absolutely, yeah.
People are afraid to talk to their kids about it, so they don't talk to their kids about it. So they end up, and especially this day and age, you don't want to like say too much about this, especially since you're still employed at a college. Yeah. But I mean, like, you can type in, a 2-syllable word on your internet account, and all of a sudden you have an infinite supply of things to see that you probably shouldn't see as your introduction to sex. Yeah. And when you think about that, some of the other problems that are being heavily debated around the country, and you think about the fact that our sex education system is so flawed that in many areas you can't teach about prevention, you can only teach about abstinence, it's a little terrifying.
I teach college. Teaching about abstinence, okay, it can be part of it.
And it should be the first part where you say, you know what you can do to stop all of it? This. Now let's talk about what's actually happening. Yeah. And be honest about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
because it's really, and again, I had this conversation.
Like a pretty
liberal. Oh, totally.
Man, what?
Well, and it's not
Alex
even.
Keaton has changed.
Yeah, and on some issues, a lot. I mean, still, like, as far as government, because I look at this, I mean, it's the same thing as tax cuts. Yeah, it's like you have to have spending cuts to put shit like this into place. Yeah. So let's talk about where we're gonna, like, one, if we go back to the tax rates that we had, we reduce our deficit. Now let's talk about where we're cutting the other money. And let's have that conversation too, because it has to be like, I don't think it has to be both, but we can't decrease our tax revenue while increasing our spending. And that's just the worst way to go about things. But with this is one of those, like, to me, this isn't a conservative or liberal issue. This is an issue where if you want to make the argument for a conservative, it's, okay, so you're mad about how much welfare we have in this country. Stop teaching only abstinence. Yeah. If you are a liberal and you want to say, like, we need to just teach, and liberals would be totally on board with this, I know, but it's like, if you're a liberal argument, it has that all over the place. But it's like, if you want to talk to a conservative about this, it's like, how much money could you spend? Because I guarantee if you have this in place and you do, and this is where I definitely go off the rails from the libertarian side, but if you're not going to be on board with having that talk and putting that into place, then you damn sure better, spend the $10 a month per female, young female that can't afford it, and make sure they have birth control. Because, again, that to me is a conservative argument. Yeah. It's like, if you want to spend $120 a year as opposed to, however many thousands of dollars in benefits, you win. Yeah. So, it's one of those things, like, it took me a while to kind of get there. But once I actually kind of went through the numbers, it was just like, yeah, there's no reason this can't happen. Mm-mm. And it would, when you look at it, it would probably save a lot of money overall. Yeah. But again, that's long-term thinking. Yeah. Not short. Yeah. It's not election cycle.
And we have such a, election cycle win now, which, by the way, I just wanted to clarify that I do know your name is Alex Howell, but we called you Alex Keaton a little bit in college.
Of course.
You were, that well-dressed Republican kid that was
That's who I was named after.
Thinking about making money.
That's who I was named after.
That's funny.
Yeah, was that show, because my parents looked at Michael J. Fox and were like, if we had a kid, probably have one that looks like that.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe I just I am too much of a maybe a for lack of a better term, a bleeding heart. Yep. But I just think there's just some basic things that and I'm ignorant on certain topics, just like everybody's ignorant on certain topics.
Yeah.
I try not to talk about them too much, but I still do. Who knows?
Oh, yeah.
I think I know what I'm talking about, and then I don't.
Well, it's in our face 24/7 now.
Yeah,
too,
yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. Don't even get me started on the 24-hour news cycle.
Yep.
But it's kind of like I just don't believe that ignorance is a good policy.
No. In any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
From education to
I mean, I don't care
administration.
how much absolutely. Abstinence is the best way to prevent pregnancy, to prevent diseases, all kinds of things. But it's not realistic.
Yeah.
Everybody talks about, whatever's happening to the generations today and all these things. I mean, hell, there's a 5th century Greece play about, a sex strike.
Yeah.
People think that bawdiness happened just recently, but it's been around since the beginning of time, and talks about sex have been around since
Is that the one where
beginning of time.
Is that the one where they talk about, like, they do a sex strike to end a war?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's probably an incredible idea. If you do a sex strike, you get dumbass men from warring, then,
Yeah. I talked to several people quite a bit about stuff like this because, again, like, I also think, like, I want to talk to people that I disagree with because if they have a great idea, then I'll change without question. But what I will never understand, and again, this goes back to why I originally thought about running, was just like, I don't understand. We were never everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
For many years, we found places to go to war with. And then it was done, and it was over. Like, I think I saw some statistic that we only haven't been at war for like 17 years in our entire history.
Yeah.
But it used to be
for
like
a while there, it seemed like every 10 years we'd have a war, no matter what.
Yeah. Like, got to get that hit.
Yeah, make sure. Yeah. Economy needs a boost.
Exactly. But like right now, it's just like this is how empires fell, man. When they were just everywhere, when they expanded, all over the globe. And you look at our budget, and like there are the programs that I bring up cuts to, and it would never get a politician elected, but like Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, like you have to eventually address those issues because they're growing and they're growing fast.
Yeah.
And there are all kinds of ways and means to test that, but it's not going to be a fun conversation, and it's not something that a current politician is going to want to have. But you do have to have those conversations because eventually it's going to be everything's paid for, but we still don't have enough money coming in.
Yeah.
Oh, and now somebody attacked us, so we have to go to war again, but we don't have the funds to do it. Or we do, but now our economy is going to look negative. But, I can't remember exactly what the last figure I saw because it keeps growing too, but I saw that our military budget was something like $780 billion. Like, it's getting close to $1 trillion. And when you see the breakdown of it, overseas operations is 65% or so of that. Like, so you could cut $400 billion tomorrow if you just weren't there.
Well, if anybody were really serious about making budget cuts, then and I was in the Army.
Yeah.
Just in my little world of the Army, I saw tons of waste there. I think the misnomer is there's no such thing as waste. There's waste anywhere.
Oh, yeah.
I don't care if you're the most frugal company in the entire world. There's stuff you're wasting.
Yeah.
No matter what happens. So, I was a member of the Army, and there's part of it where that's one of the biggest places where you could make significant cuts.
Yeah.
And it's probably not popular for me to say, but it's, I'm sorry, how much we pay for the arts in general is on average, the last time I checked, 53 cents per household per year.
Yeah.
That whole big thing about cutting PBS, which to me sometimes is the only place that I can watch that really tries to be balanced.
Right.
I don't see them tearing apart Republicans or Democrats. They just kind of report the news.
Yeah. Whoa, what a concept.
Holy shit. How did that happen?
Maybe that's why we have to cut them. They're not doing what we think they should because we're so used to it.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. So now we're gonna cut them, but it's it just seems odd to me that we don't look at some of the huge ticket items that if we're trying to balance a budget,
Yeah.
Social Security is, fortunately or unfortunately, probably not going to go away.
Oh, it won't. No question. Well, and they can't. It's a Ponzi scheme. I tell everybody this. It's like, without question, Social Security is a Ponzi. Like, the only thing that makes it not a Ponzi scheme is that the government is the company that normally screws people over, but they can tax you. I mean, and this is how we have the credit rating we do. I mean, this goes back to like cryptocurrencies, and people are like, yeah, there's really no difference between a cryptocurrency like Bitcoin and the US dollar. It's like, yes, there is, because one, they're both based on faith.
Yeah.
Like, they're both based on faith. But two, one has the full faith and credit of the people and citizens of the United States of America in the form of being able to collect tariffs and tax dollars.
Yeah.
That's what separates us from any of those things.
Mm-hmm.
So when you think about that, it's like that's what separates Social Security from a Ponzi scheme, is that you can just continue to tax. I think eventually it's going to get crazy enough. And I'll tell you that the millennial generation, as much as it's bitched about, probably saved Social Security for the next several decades, because we had baby boomers, which were this giant generation, and then you had Gen X that was not very big.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, for some reason, millennials, our parents just kept spawning. So we went to like the largest generation of mankind, like 90, not of mankind because those are over in China right now.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's 90 million of us.
Yeah.
And so we're going to be able to come up to that, come into that bubble when baby boomers retire, and there are actually going to be enough people to pay for those in retirement at the time.
Yeah.
But then if we're leaving, gluten-free, vegan, and organic lifestyles, then we might live for a while too. So not me. No, I'll be gone.
You'll be gone too. I'm eating hot dogs no matter what.
Just a steak and potato. I'll be good to go.
Yeah.
But I mean, once that generation goes up, though, I mean, I don't know if this is saying that, like, if this is incorrect. I hope somebody corrects me, but I don't see my generation having the amount of children that
No, I don't think so. Yeah.
that previous have. So when my generation gets Social Security, then it's going to have to be a real serious conversation about means testing for it.
Yeah.
And that's going to be kind of the only way.
Yeah, I mean, it's, I think that the thing and like I said, I'm no expert. I just have years of watching the news and reading and looking at things. But I think sometimes when we look at the United States, we only hate the socialist programs that don't benefit us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Don't take away my Social Security, but we got to take away welfare or whatever.
Yeah. Well, unemployment's that's the best example.
Yeah.
Like you hate it
until you need it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's just, I like I said, I don't know the answer. I think that the one thing I really liked about Bernie is it was kind of a no bullshit. We're a socialist democracy.
Mm-hmm.
We are not a pure democracy.
Yeah, did you see Bill Maher's thing where he called it capitalism plus?
yeah. But and what I love about Bill Maher is that he will bring on Republicans and people that he vehemently disagrees with and give them kind of Kellyanne Conway was on Bill Maher.
Kellyanne Conway, Ben Shapiro.
Yeah.
Ben Shapiro's a guy that I started following a while back, probably 3 years ago.
Yeah.
I was like, here's a young guy, intelligent, knows how to debate. And obviously a lot of his debate strategy is just knowing how to debate, so he wins.
Yeah.
But super intelligent guy, and he has the thing that Bill Maher has that a lot of people have that, are actually shows that you can intellectually enjoy, and that is even if you disagree, they can defend their point.
Yeah.
And they can both sit there and say, I disagree with, name a program, Social Security.
Yeah.
I disagree with Social Security for this reason. Well, I like Social Security for this reason. Well, I think we should do this. Well, I don't think we should do this. I think we should do that. Here's why I think that. Here's why I think that. Like, fantastic. Keep doing that. And again, like you said, he brings those people on. And that's a wonderful thing.
I think it's great. I wish more people would. It's not an easy thing to do.
No.
But bring on more people that you disagree with.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think the last one Bill Maher had on. I can see his face. An incredible conservative mind. And even Bill Maher had listened to or read his books and said, I'm
Yeah.
incredibly impressed. I disagree on many issues,
Yeah.
but I'm incredibly impressed by what you write. And you could tell there was a mutual respect
Yeah.
for each other. You know, Bill Clinton and George H.W. really were pretty good friends.
Yeah.
And now we've gotten to a point where somehow it seems like it's weakness if you respect someone that disagrees with you when,
Right.
hell, isn't that what we're about?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, we're going to disagree politically on some issues, but I'm not going to come out of here going, I'm not going to come out of here not saying that you're an awesome person.
Yeah.
I don't care if you disagree with me. Thank God you disagree with me.
Yeah. Yeah. If we were all of the same mind, that'd be fucking terrifying.
Yeah, I sure as hell don't want to run everything.
No.
Yeah.
And I mean, and again, when you go back to it, when you find those things that you agree with somebody on there that you can share with that is different than you, whether that's, you go somewhere and you travel, or you're in theater and you have those experiences, whatever it might be, you find that, yeah, we might disagree. We might be from a different place, and that place might have different values, but we can actually find some common ground. And sometimes you can even find situations where you say, and we both disagree that this one thing is fucking terrible.
Yeah. But now it seems some kind of weakness if we say that one of our ideas is not a great idea, or it won't work, or whatever. And, I don't know. Yeah. I look at, like, healthcare. There's all this stuff about the, Affordable Care Act, which some people don't know that's the same thing as Obamacare, which I can't fathom. But it's a Republican idea.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in its pure sense, it's, the insurance companies competing against one another for the best rates. And I personally have known several people that were, I didn't know several, but I knew one in particular that was on welfare and was so proud that she could pay for her own health insurance.
Mm-hmm.
And, she was embarrassed that she had to be on welfare.
Yeah.
And that, Medicaid, Medicare, I was good to submit, but it was that she had to be on that.
Yeah.
And, she was excited.
I'm sure.
And it's been, whittled away, but there was something, I can't remember if it was Roosevelt or somebody had kind of proposed something like what Obamacare was supposed to be.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it because he put in more this is one of the things I told the first Corey, my history buddy, about. It's like a lot of people like FDR, and I as soon as you put American citizens in internment camps, I can't like you as a president anymore.
Yeah.
But I mean, obviously he again did what he thought was right for the nation at the time.
Yeah.
And you can disagree with our 2020 hindsight what you think about it, but I mean you're right in the sense of Obamacare was in the purest sense a Republican idea because it wasn't single payer.
Yeah.
It was like, we're going to make sure people are.
And Obama was smart enough to know that there was no way a single payer system
was going to work.
Was going to fly.
Yeah, exactly.
It would be killed, no matter what.
Yeah,
but we got to find something better than what we had. And now it's been dismantled so much that any good that it did do, it's almost like, why do we worry about here? We'll just get really controversial. Why do we worry about whether Roe v. Wade is going to be overturned or not? Because most Republican states have made it so hard for someone to go to a Planned Parenthood center that it's pretty much already illegal.
Yeah. And I mean, I've, on the last podcast when I was talking to the Arts Asylum, Corey, I'm going to have to figure out a different way to say it. One has an E, one has no E.
Yeah.
But I was talking to him, that was one of the issues where it was like, it's one of those, I was always just like without question pro-choice. And then you have a kid that's premature and you're like, oh man, that threw kind of a moral wrench into me.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't something I arrived at immediately, but it's, as I've thought about it, and I think I've got this on all the websites that I try to like fill out my beliefs, but I always say that I'm pro-life. But me as an individual, even if I were to make it up to, if you're a congressman or if you're president or whatever, that's the beauty to me of the Supreme Court is that, yes, I consider myself pro-life, and I am not the United States of America in one person.
Yeah.
And they determined that that's what it is in Roe v. Wade. Roe v. Wade also has a lot more complication to it than just one issue.
Yeah.
So, if you're thinking about overturning, like this needs to be a national conversation that isn't, are you pro-choice or pro-life? It needs to be a conversation of, you have to recognize that as an individual, you don't represent 330 million people unless you're the president of the United States, in which case all of them should do a better job. Because every single one of them's failed in one way, shape, or form, because it's an impossible fucking job.
Well, the thing is that I don't know what the right answer is.
Yeah.
Because why don't we try to deal with the issue of violence against women?
Yeah.
Because then there'll be a lot of cases of abortions that won't happen because a woman hasn't been sexually assaulted.
Mm-hmm.
But that's opposite ends of the aisle.
Yeah.
I mean, it's opposite sides. Why don't we deal with the sex education or, through welfare or other programs? Why don't we deal with it there? I mean, I shouldn't say this, but I'm going to anyway.
Yeah.
But,
if people are listening to us 2 hours and 46 minutes into the podcast, they're sticking around.
Yeah. So is there such a thing? Really, to me, a lot of it's pro-birth.
Mm-hmm.
It's not pro-life.
Right.
Because you got to support these. You got to figure out a way as a society. We may disagree on this, but you got to figure out a way to deal with a problem. To me, it's always been, the analogy has been, you're fixing a leak by channeling it somewhere else.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's just kind of like, we can make it illegal, but
but that's not going to solve.
It's not going to solve the problem.
No, because and that's liberals. In my opinion, it's one of the best arguments for liberals to continue to kind of say, like, we have to protect Roe v. Wade. It's because all of the people that remember what it was like before and how bad that was. And again, I think that if you're a Republican, rather than saying we have to overturn it, we have to kill these facilities, you don't have to kill the facilities if you kill the need for them.
Yeah.
If you can do that, then you solve the problem in an intelligent way.
Yeah.
And again, like I said, Roe v. Wade, it's not just about, like, abortion on call. Like, that's what it's always been made out to be. There's a lot more in there, more than I honestly probably should talk about, because I don't understand it as well.
Yeah. And I can't say that I'm an expert at it. I just, I know from being a human being that I've known people that were in that situation, and it sure as hell was not a decision that I could make for someone else.
No.
And if it's pure libertarian, then we shouldn't be in it whatsoever.
Yeah. And I push back a little bit on that, only because of the idea that when you look at the situation overall, if you look at it as it's a woman's choice of something within her body, as opposed to a woman's choice about a human being that is within her body. And that's where my brain goes, I'm more on the human being side because of my experience.
Yeah.
Not everybody has that experience. And not everybody that went through what I've went through, or even earlier than mine, feels the same way. So, but yeah, it's one of those, like, it's tough for me to comprehend ever having to make that choice, and I'm so happy I never did. Yeah. But, I've known people that have. And it's not, like you said, it's not anything that's ever taken lightly.
No.
You didn't walk in there like, well, I know exactly what's going to happen.
Anybody who's, and this is where it gets into the semantics of it, but it's, pro-life people calling pro-choice people pro-abortion, or pro-choice people calling pro-life people anti-choice.
Mm-hmm. Or anti-woman.
Yeah, anti-woman or whatever. It's just, in a lot of respects, I hope we're all pro-life.
Yeah.
But, it's just not that simple.
No.
It's just not that simple, because we're not really funding education.
Right.
So how are we saying that we can have more children? There's all kinds of things that, let's deal with the problems.
Yeah.
Not just the symptoms.
Right.
Of the problems. And that's an oversimplification, but it sure seems like we're not worried about a lot of those other things.
Yeah. It seems like we try to determine morality based on an end end result as opposed to all of the things that were, I guess, technically also end results that we don't want to really get into.
Yeah.
And that's my thing about sex education. It's like you could probably make it more fiscally responsible to, continue Roe v. Wade, but make sure that you, one, had kids that knew what was going on, weren't shamed or ashamed about it,
Yeah.
and, had access to be able to stop that process in its tracks. And
it's that myth that talking about sex means they'll be more active.
Yeah.
Really talking about sex,
Probably
at
not.
least some of the research I looked at when I was in college, really the more education, the more abstinence increased.
I wouldn't be surprised.
I mean, there were Chicago schools that did studies back in the 90s that, I'm not an expert on it by any means, but the more people know, either the safer they were, but things that we all want, teen pregnancies went down.
Mm-hmm.
There was counseling and birth control.
Yeah.
That were in some of these schools. And everything that we want decreased.
Yeah.
But abstinence only, I haven't found any proof that says that's an effective method.
No. It cannot be.
Yeah.
I mean, you're on the battleground teaching kids that are sometimes just on their own.
Yeah.
For the first time. So
yeah, and I like I said, I don't know every kid that's every 18-year-old in the world, but
yeah,
I've known a lot of them
mm-hmm.
over the years, and like I said, I still think that there's a lot of good things that are coming out of. I mean, hell, it's weird thinking that since I've been teaching, now I have people that are middle-aged that I had when they were 18, and I've just seen the growth in them. That's been incredible.
Yeah.
And we could name names, but we're probably going too long here anyway.
That's okay. Well, I'm glad we got a good conversation in with theater. I'm glad we kind of talked a little bit about some of the other stuff that goes on, because I think that when you have the conversation about what we just went through, I mean, we're in a period of time where politics is shoved in our face all the time, whether we like it or not.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, or fortunately, I guess you could look at it too, like we're all pretty aware of the results of that.
Yeah.
And I think that's a positive thing, because I think there have been periods of time in our country's history where either people weren't allowed to participate in the process or just didn't and kind of let things happen, as opposed to kind of standing up and knowing what was going on. So I think even as ridiculous as certain things are, it's probably a positive that people are at least involved.
Yeah.
And
I think
have
it's
a voice in the
incredibly
fight.
positive.
Yeah.
I look at all these brave people in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
Right now, standing up against the extradition proposals that are being made by China. Those are incredibly brave people.
Yeah.
And hopefully we're getting more and more here that'll stand up.
Yeah.
I don't know what's completely right, because hell, I'm not that smart.
Yeah. That's always in the gray area.
Yeah. Yeah. Everybody says when things are black and white, I'm like, no,
they're not.
too many choices.
Yeah.
And just make it that are so different, and we don't think about the consequences a lot of times.
Yeah.
Of what we're doing. And like I said, I hope no one listening to this thinks that I think I'm like some expert that knows. I personally, I think if anybody who thinks they knows everything are probably some of the least intelligent people in the world.
Absolutely.
Because at least my education has been, the more I learned, the more I realized I don't know.
Yep.
And even people in education can be arrogant about that, saying that I'm smarter or whatever. Education's a piece of paper.
Right.
Sometimes it's about perseverance.
Mm-hmm.
But I've seen some pretty dumb, well-educated people. Hell, I may be one of them. I don't know. But I think that I think I'm smart enough to know that I don't know.
Yeah.
Know what I don't know.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, I think the greatest thing you can be as an educator is you have to be somebody that your students can approach, and you've always been that.
Oh,
You have to be somebody that, because if you're, and had teachers that, forever from high school to, Mizzou, it was like you just have some of those teachers that are just like, I'm going to throw some stuff up on the board, I'm going to yell at you for an hour, I'm going to leave, and if you get the grade, if you don't get the grade, then that's not my problem. But I don't think that kind of mentality could ever be attributed to you. I think you've always been very much in your students' lives. And I mean, I don't want to say especially with your theater students in the vein of they're more important, but you're just around them more. And so
I see them,
Yeah.
a lot when I'm in rehearsal, 20 hours a week,
yeah, so
close to that. So, and then they're, periodically, it kind of goes in waves. They'll be in my office talking, or
Katie's
we had,
barbecue,
yeah,
talking about a shoe.
yeah. We had a few of those conversations back in the day. So yeah, and I think that you were like every other 18-year-old trying to just figure shit out.
Yeah,
And
horrible at it at times.
well, we all are at times. That's a bad thing too. Is that at least my teens, through a little bit of restaurant management, the Army, college, it's not all recorded on Facebook or whatever media you choose.
Yeah, I remember that I remember the day that Facebook came out and said that they were going to open it up to everybody, and I just went, "Oh, I hope it dies. I hope this thing
Back
doesn't
when you were
grow."
in college, I think it was MySpace was the big one.
It transitioned when I went to. I think they opened it up to any EDU address right before I left State Fair.
Mm-hmm.
So it was MySpace when I was there. Until like the last several months, and they said they were just doing EDU. So I used initially my State Fair EDU and then transitioned it to my Mizzou one. And then soon after I got to college, I think Facebook was like, "Why the fuck are we just doing this for college students?
Yeah.
We could ruin everybody's life."
Woohoo! Hot damn.
Yeah. So
It's too bad. It went from tell me about your kids and cute pictures
to sharing just vile things.
Yeah.
Yes, I don't ever unfriend people, but I block a lot of people, and it's just because of that. It's like, oh, so you're an asshole now. That's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Okay. And they probably have done the same thing.
And I try to just be, when I'm on there, and I'm not on there very much, just try to be as positive as I can.
Yeah. That's good.
About, all we need is love. Dun, 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 dun.
Big heart.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, hey, man, thanks so much for coming on.
Well, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Anytime.
You
You live close now.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah. Hope it didn't sound like an idiot.
No, I'm sure you didn't.
Okay, cool. Well, thanks, Alex. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.